The Game and the Game Nashville app. We're streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. And we're broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Happy Monday. D-Mase is back after a weekend in Boston. And also Willy D, another proud dad of a grad. So congratulations to both of you.
Oh, yeah.
Two sons moving on to the next thing.
Yes, one moving on to the real world, and the other's moving on to the college world.
life.
Yes.
Willy wearing his Dennison hat.
Yes,
I'm going Dennison today. Yep. Dennison baseball, by the way, won the regional over the weekend. So the first time in school history. So that is what Mahoney is,
stepping
going
into
into
something.
next year. So they're still in the hunt for even bigger things. They'll
He
in
could
the
be a
Super
part
Regional.
of something,
That's
something
the
special.
hope. That's the hope. But it's also, it'll be a good challenge.
Exactly.
Can't just walk in there and say, "Hey, I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. Let me just set the
I'm
world on
Mahoney
fire."
Donick.
See my last
I'm Mahoney
name?
Donick.
You gotta earn it. You gotta earn it.
You know who my
Give me
dad
a
is?
bat. You know who my dad is? He went to Vanderbilt. He played. You know who my dad is?
But it was good. We had a great weekend. We went all out. We had a fast pace. Had a lot of family in town. I'm sure it was great for you, too, D-Mase, up there in Boston.
Yeah, the weather was crappy though.
Was it?
It was
that's a
bad
bummer.
up, man. I mean, the first day it was okay, which was Thursday. Friday, it was all right. I mean, it was still overcast. Saturday, he had his graduation. Luckily, it was indoors, and it was a high 50s. A little sun came out every now and then. Sunday, it was just bad. Well, Saturday, it did rain later in the evening. Sunday, it rained all day basically, and they had their commencement Sunday, and they said, rain, shine, we're having it. And it was raining. Yeah, they were having it. They set up the chairs and everything, and Derek was like, nah, I don't want to go to that, because they had already walked across the stage the day before, and this was just the speeches. And, people they pay to come in and give the commencement speech. So it was going to be nice, but he was like, I don't want to do that. And I don't blame him. I'm like, okay, you walked across stage, and, that's really what it's about.
Got to do his thing.
Exactly.
You got to watch him walk across the stage.
Walk. I mean, those kids are damn smart. I'll tell you that. Those kids are, summa cum laude. Kuma kulada, kakamululu, everything. It was everything. I'm like, damn, these kids smart. Like, goodness. We were discussing something, and it was in, I think he said one class, like if you got below a B, you had to take the class over. Oh. I'm like, I'd have been taking that class like 30 times then.
Jeez.
I took that class over and over and over again.
Cutthroat.
Yeah, it's cutthroat up there, but he did a wonderful job his 4 years there. Graduated and made the dean's list all but one semester, so that was great.
That's amazing.
And he's just looking forward to being back home for a year with his sister. And like I said, he and his sister got something that they're working on together, which I love. And he'll work, do some stuff around town, and then go back to med school in a year. So I'm happy for him, man. So
exciting. Congratulations to Mahoney as well.
Absolutely.
Fun weekend for the Donick family.
A quick shout out to those. Some graduations were this past weekend, obviously, and then some are coming up. And in between, you've got the spring fling going on in Murfreesboro. So shout out to all who might be just driving around right now, getting ready for some games. This week. I know the soccer, the track, it's a really fun thing. If you've never been out there in Murfreesboro, you've got all of the spring sports in the entire state championship realm,
so
all in Murfreesboro, which
wow,
is really the center point of the state. I didn't even know that until a few years ago, that Murfreesboro is like you could find the exact center of the state. That's why one of the reasons why they have them there.
Everything is there all the time.
But they also have really good facilities for the high school championship. So you've got the track.
I love the
right
gym.
next to the baseball field. Yeah, the baseball.
Great facilities.
Real cool facilities for that. So it's going on. So it's spring fling in Murfreesboro. It's going down this week.
Exciting time
I'm going to
year.
be doing the baseball again, which I have. I just love doing it. Showing up at where Middle Tennessee plays their baseball games. I've seen some classics. Seen some really good players come through there too. So we'll see who ends up in the big games Thursday and Friday. They'll be playing these next couple days to see who gets there.
It'll be a blast. It's such a fun time of year. So congratulations to the very proud dads of the program. Nick, one of us, both of us someday. We'll get there.
You'll get there.
We'll get there.
One
I'll
day.
get there. Don't worry about it.
I'm a god brother. That's all that matters right now, so that's all good.
That is true.
And if I apologize on the front end, if I killed a few brain cells over the weekend and I'm sounding a little slow, you might know why.
You deserve it, man.
It's okay, Willy.
I cut loose. I cut loose a little bit. Once it was all over, I can
imagine
came
Willy
yeah.
dancing, cutting loose.
doing karaoke.
Billy Idol, dancing with myself.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, it was a great weekend. Happy Monday, and congratulations to both of you. We'll catch up with TD, Teron Davenport, at 1 p.m. We got OTAs going down tomorrow, so we'll get TD's thoughts, what he wants to see from OTAs. But I want to start on the Predators today, because I saw this time last week, Joe Rexrode put out the fan poll, and I've been checking back every single day to see the results of that fan poll, because I feel like on this program, we get a pretty good idea of what Predators fans want through the text line, through the callers, through social media. But still, I don't know if that's really the most fair evaluation of exactly what the entire fan base wants. So I was interested to see, the fans' reaction all kind of in one place about the biggest, most pressing questions about this team. So Joe Rexrode published the results of his Predators fan survey. So you can find that on The Athletic. The belief in Barry Trotz, belief in Andrew Brunette, of course, the big topic of trading UC Saros, the direction of where this fan base is, the direction of where this franchise is going. Do you double down? Do you add more goal scorers? Do you try to get younger? Do you tear things down a little bit more? What the fans want from this team. So let's start with the first question that Joe put out there. Which choice best describes your feelings about the current state of the Predators? Highly optimistic, cautiously optimistic, somewhat pessimistic, highly pessimistic, or apathetic? 72.9% said cautiously optimistic. 17.2% said highly optimistic. So we've got about 90% of Predators fans optimistic in some form or fashion or some sort of capacity. Overall, it tells me fans are really excited about the direction of this team. Let's go back to Adam Vingan's survey on May 31st, 2022. 36.5% skeptical, 23.2% frustrated, 18.5% pessimistic, 9% apathetic. So looking at about 80% of fans that are frustrated, skeptical, pessimistic, apathetic. Now you're looking at 90% optimistic. That's just in the span of 2 years.
It's pretty interesting turnaround. I would say that I'm not surprised after 1 year and the year they had that there's a pretty good feeling about, first of all, the sentimental part of bringing back Barry Trotz, and to an extent, I mean, Andrew Brunette was only there for 1 year, but it was the first year, so there is something sentimental about that. But Barry Trotz was a massive foundation of the franchise. Bringing him back after going elsewhere and coming back with a cup and a lot of wins in different places, different experiences, I think there's certainly it's easy to see why people believe in what he's done and Brunette to go with it. I think we should give David Poile a little credit because, and it's mentioned in there in Joe's article correctly, that I think David Poile did a good job of handing Barry Trotz some things to work with, right? He didn't gut the farm system. He didn't sell out to try to just eke his way to the playoffs. That last year, give himself one more chance. Like, he did what was right for the franchise. I think he fairly listened, and he knew what the fans were thinking about the team that was going on, and he agreed. He said, they're just not good enough. We need to shake up a little bit. Let's take a step back. Let's get assets. Let's get some trade pieces, and let's give Barry Trotz a chance to go do some things. And it's so far after 1 year, I think you got to give him high marks.
I don't know. I don't know why you wouldn't be optimistic about, or cautiously optimistic, either way, about the direction of this franchise, considering where they were last year and what they had to do as far as basically, it's almost like they gutted the franchise with certain players, guys that played key roles in their lineup, and they had to trade, or move on from them. And then their replacements have been more than satisfactory for this team. You look at their farm system in Milwaukee. They're stacked up there. The picks that they have, in the drafts coming up. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be, optimistic or cautiously optimistic. Last year was a different year. This team was building into something, I think. They had a lot of questions that needed to be answered. And I think most of them, they answered them. Now, they still got to get better moving forward. Mm-hmm. But I think some of the questions, they did answer. And Barry did a good job at, making the moves necessary to put this team in a position where it seems like they're ascending rather than not. And like Willie said, David Poyle, you gotta tie him into this too, because I think the way they transitioned from Poyle to Barry was monumental. Yeah. Because sometimes it doesn't, when you're getting ready to leave, sometimes, some people are like, listen, I'm gone. Mm-hmm. This is y'all mess to handle. I'm getting out of here. But David didn't think, because to David, this is his family. So he wanted to leave this, this organization in the best possible condition for Barry as he could. And I think he did. And I think that would reap benefits moving forward.
And look, I'm not surprised in the slightest that that's the reaction, because if I'm taking this poll as a fan, I'd probably say cautiously optimistic as well. And in saying cautiously optimistic, that doesn't mean that, I want to be optimistic. I really do, but I don't know. It's just we only have a 1-year sample size. Mm-hmm. But I feel really encouraged at least about the direction of this team right now. So I'm not surprised in the slightest. And that's mostly, I think, the reaction that we've gotten from callers and texters on the show is really excited about what comes next for this team. How could you not be?
I think also, if you're voting for cautious optimistic, I could be voting for that just because I feel really good about where it's going, but I also know how tough it is to win in the playoffs, because I think logic would tell you if they do this poll in another 2 years and they haven't won a playoff round,
it's probably different.
Right, there's going to be frustration, even though it's not going to change how tough it is to win in the playoffs. It is. You can be really good and still not find that way to win in the playoffs. It happens in every sport, and definitely it's the case in hockey.
Do you think the 3 reasons, or I believe the 3 reasons why they are cautiously optimistic? One is because the UC Saros thing is still a question mark. A Scaroff is still a question mark. And then are they going to find a forward, somebody that top line guy? So those 3 things, to me, causes a fan to say, I like the direction they're going in, but they still have these these 3 question marks across the board. A Scaroff, UC, and then can they find that big boy forward?
Right. I think you have this hunger as the fan base to get back into winning playoff series, right? You've been there, you've tasted it, and now you want to get back there. So I get that, right? That's going to keep you cautious, right? So, okay, now show me how you're going to get to the next level. I've seen this level, and it's a nice job to get back to that level.
It's like you're growing.
And they played well in that playoff series. They did not look like they were overmatched at all by Vancouver, who has now taken Edmonton all the way to the brink, and now we'll see what happens in Game 7 tonight. And they lost Brock Besser, which is to a blood clot. That's just a really, really tough thing for them, especially based on what he's done in the playoffs. I mean, you could argue, had they not had Brock Besser against the Predators, that might have been.
Might win that series.
They'd probably win that series.
They win Game 4.
That's the guy that made the big plays for Vancouver. So they're right there, but how do you get better? They know they have to get better. The Predators do. The fans know it too. So let's see what they do. But they have avenues to get there. I think that's what I feel most positive about, most optimistic about, is they have some different ways, some flexible ways to choose which way they want to try to get better.
A refreshed perspective. I also do think one element that leads into fans' optimism is how open and honest Barry Trotz is. Maybe I'm overvaluing that for myself as somebody that's on the radio in this town, and I appreciate that, at least the topics that we get out of Barry Trotz. I appreciate the openness from Barry Trotz. But I do think to a certain extent that fans appreciate that as well. Of if there are going to be big moves, I'm not going to say if, when there are big moves that Barry Trotz has to make, and those big moves very much so can happen in the next month to 2 months. I think Barry Trotz is going to be very honest about what led him to that decision, why they made that decision, and why he thinks that the best move moving forward for this franchise. Fans appreciate that.
I would think so. And look, we benefit on our station being the flagship that he is willing to do that communication with the fans.
Yeah.
Not every GM in every NHL market does that, or let alone other sports, other GMs, right? And I don't blame GMs for not wanting to broadcast their thoughts, but I think
Totally.
a fan should appreciate that he does the work to try to connect and communicate with the fans as best he can.
100%. And moving along in Joe's Predator fan poll on The Athletic, the second question is, on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest, how confident are you that general manager Barry Trotz can build a Stanley Cup contender? On a scale of 1 to 5, so 1 being not at all and 5 is a ton of confidence. 53.1 say 4. 26.3 say 5. Nearly 20% say 3, and just 0.8% of fans say either 1 or 2. So just kind of leads into the amount of encouragement that Predators fans have gotten in Barry Trotz's short tenure so far. Now, to compare that to 2022, when Adam Vingan asked the question in The Athletic, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest, how confident are you that David Poile can return the team to Stanley Cup contender status? 22.7 said 1. 38.4 said 2. So an overwhelming majority of fans that didn't feel any sort of optimism at all. And I don't want this to be about David Poile versus Barry Trotz, because that's not how this change happened. That's not how this move happened. That's not how this team is constructed. It's not one versus the other. But I do think that it shows in just a short period of time how quickly the fan base's perspective of this team has changed, and maybe how necessary a change was at the top.
I think it could change again pretty quick.
Totally.
I think that Barry Trotz would be the first to tell you that if you don't win, the perception
Oh, yeah.
is going to change. The fans will
Turn
change
on you
directions.
eventually.
Sure, that's life in sports, life at the top. But I do think the thing I always had faith in David Poile, and because of his track record over the long haul was very consistent. But the one thing that everybody would use against him is, and there's nothing he could do about it until they won a cup, is he hadn't won a cup.
Yeah.
Barry Trotz came in with a cup that he had won after he left Nashville. I think that gave him some credibility going in. The other thing that I think is unique perspective that I think has helped him have a good year is his knowledge of what it's like on the bench, right? And David Poile is more the traditional general manager that he wasn't a coach, right? He went straight into sort of assistant GM, learn the traits, learn the scouts and things like that. And that's a great way to become a successful GM. But I think Barry Trotz having that knowledge base of, okay, what is a coach going through when this is going on? What does a team need? I think that was a unique perspective that was fresh coming into how he built this team. And you could see what he did right from the start in the offseason after sort of he sort of integrated himself into the team last year when he was taking over, kind of behind the scenes, but he was there, right? He was watching from the inside, and then he said, okay, here's what I think the team needs to try to get a fresh start.
Yeah, 100%. And it's how quickly it happened, I think, too. It wasn't just the fact that there was a change in management or there was a change in leadership, there was a change of head coach. It wasn't just the change itself. There was the change. We saw the path. We understood the vision. And then Barry Trotz at least executed that vision. Now, I understand. We only have 1 year of a sample size of this. Like you said, Willy, things can change at the drop of a hat. And I think that the loyalty or maybe even adoration from the fan base to a general manager or a coach, the shelf life could be like an avocado. It could change at any moment. That there could be one single move or one single season that completely changes the perspective or the buy-in from a fan base. But at least for me right now, And it sounds like from the fan base right now, we're really intrigued and we like where this team is going.
Well, yeah. I mean, the chemistry of this team has been built really good, at least for this upcoming year. Obviously, they had to subtract, some personalities or whatnot. And again, not to say that they were bad people. It's just, you try to find the best fit to establish, the quote unquote culture in your locker room. And it seems like they found those guys. Now, the part about it that makes me a little bit, optimistic about it, because every year it changes. You're going to have to add new guys into the mix. How will those guys come in, and will the chemistry be the same, or will it change? This year, the chemistry worked out pretty good.
Yeah.
Now you're going to be adding new guys next year. You got to try to keep that. You got to try to maintain that same chemistry in order to consistently win. And it seems like, Barry understands that. And, he's constructing this team. You obviously got to have good players. But I think then you have to have, because good players without chemistry, it's nothing. We've seen it across the board in every sport. Teams try to put together these mega teams. I remember the Washington Commanders, formerly, the Redskins. They tried to put the whole team together, Deion, all these guys, that Hall of Fame guys.
Yeah.
And it did not work. Why? Because the chemistry wasn't there.
You see it in basketball all
Exactly.
the time.
You see it in basketball, and that's why some teams struggle for a while until they build that chemistry. And Barry, it worked out for him this year, where you put some guys in certain situations, situations that they were unfamiliar with, and throughout the season, that chemistry started to grow and grow. And now not necessarily the plan, but now what word am I thinking? Not advantage. Gosh, I can't think of the word right now. But it's for him to come back and try to duplicate it the next following year. The same type chemistry. Because if you don't have the same type of chemistry you had this season, it may not work next season.
And that's on Andrew Burnett and on Barry Trotz. I do want to continue this conversation and continue to go through Joe's results of the Predators fan survey in The Athletic about one of the biggest questions that the Predators are facing in the offseason, and that's the goaltending position. We've talked about it. We've aired out kind of how we feel, what we would do if we were in Barry Trotz's position. But what about the fans? What would the fans do? We'll get into that coming up next, and of course, into your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game, and The Game Nashville app. We're taking a look at Joe Rexrode's Predators fan survey on The Athletic. We addressed kind of how fans feel about the direction of the franchise, how they feel about Barry Trotz, about Andrew Brunette. Overall, an overwhelming sense of optimism from the fan base, which, to be fair, I don't think is surprising. And I think it's a fair response from the fan base of what Barry Trotz and Andrew Brunette were able to accomplish in year one. Now, can they recreate that and build upon that in years 2, 3, 4? We'll see. But at least from the fan base feeling a sense of optimism. Now, let's get into the juicy question that I was really looking forward to seeing what the fan base was feeling like. Because like I said earlier, we have callers, we have texters, and I feel like that gives us at least an idea of how the fan base feels. But I wanted to kind of see it whenever you have one option over the other, whenever it's a forum that feels, like it feels to me like there's just a broader reach, at least from Joe Rexrode's fan poll here. So one question that he asked is, how would you like to see the Predators address their goaltending future? The three options: trade UC Saros and make way for the Yaroslav Askarov era, sign Saros to a long-term deal, let Askarov develop behind him and see where it goes from there, and 3, sign UC Saros to a long-term deal and trade Askarov for assets. Now, we've already seen the poll, so you know what the results were. 57.3% of the voters in Joe's poll said trade UC Saros and make way for the Yaroslav Askarov era. Does that surprise you guys?
It doesn't surprise me because I think the exciting – first of all, I want to recount now because I don't think people have seen my scrolls and heard my – argument. Yeah. I don't know when this voting took place, but I would like to reopen the polls now that all of
I think you may have swayed some people,
in.
Willie.
I definitely haven't swayed. I tried while you were gone. I continued to try.
Scrolls for the polls.
The Avengers are out there. Okay, the Avengers are trying to carry this message.
Yes,
but I don't know if it swayed that many people. I'm joking about that. But the part of the reason I think people feel so strongly about this is the excitement that Askarov creates with his charisma, right? He's a social media phenomenon. They did a bobblehead of him bench pressing the net, right? That's got nothing to do with how good of a goalie he is, although it's sort of taken for a given that he is a talented goalie, and he is a talented goalie. But I think, as I've tried to point out, and a lot of others, like Chris Mason and Pekka Rinne and others, Barry Trotz, that's different than being ready to be a starting goalie in the NHL every night. And I would pretty sure that the voting on this took place before Askarov was benched. By the way,
it was last week.
Game 2 is tonight, and let's see if they put Askarov back in there. I would think this is the time to do it. And if you were to ask me, do I think they should put him back in? Yeah, I would think now this is the time to see if he's responded. Can he respond to the challenge of being benched in the playoffs?
If you don't do it now, when will you?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I would do it tonight.
But
all that aside, there's difference in excitement of the future and actually being ready for the position. So I think when you answer that question, I don't know that everybody thinks it through, does the math of what are you going to do with UC Saros gone? Who is the other guy? Who are the people you're getting in the trade? You can't do that in a poll. So it doesn't surprise me that much that that's the vote, but I would. And these are the people that pay and subscribe to The Athletic, right? So they're looking for deep coverage. These are people that follow the team. But I would challenge those people, as I continue to do, of it's not as simple as just saying, okay, Askarov's ready, put him in there, because he's not ready.
No, he's not ready. And one of the things that I do worry, I do want to know about these numbers in this poll is, some of it is, are these people here in the state of Tennessee or the Nashville area, for one, because it's different when you're in it as opposed to being outside of it. When you're listening to local radio, when you're listening to this show, or Stillman or Rex or Chase, their shows, you get in-depth knowledge about the Predators. If you're not in the market, maybe you don't get that much conversation about the Predators in your market, but you still follow them, but you don't follow them intently like you would here. I'm not saying every fan that loves the Predators has to be here in the state to follow them like that, but a lot of time, those that are within the state, they hear the message all the time about UC or Scaroff. If you're not in it, you may hear just a Scaroff and UC had a not a great playoffs. So you start hearing the narrative from outside, but then when you're here, the narrative is a little bit different because we're watching this team every day. We're watching UC every day. We're getting updates on the Scaroff all the time. So maybe, people that are here look at it a little bit different than those that are outside the sort of Nashville market in a sense. But again, but still with that, I'm not saying that they don't follow it intently like some do here. But I just got to believe that if you're here and you're listening, whether you've listened to Willy, you've listened to D-Mase, you've listened to Pecorine last week. That was a great interview by Jared. I think that if you repolled it, there may be a little bit.
Well, the polling happened last week. It's not like it happened last week.
But I'm just saying, like, listening to those guys, I think not necessarily change your mind, but allows you to think a little bit more. Because a lot of times you just see, you hear about the young guy, 6'6", 6'7", just a freak of nature in the net. You automatically think, bring him up. Well, what about the GM that, has been talking about this young man or hasn't been talking about him when the question was asked, or the head coach benching him during the playoffs in Milwaukee? Stuff like that. We look at it a little bit different. We look at it as, well, maybe he's not ready. So maybe, not signing UC or trading UC and bringing a Scaroff up, that may not be beneficial for this team where they're at right now. If you're cautiously optimistic about this team moving forward, how then can you just say, let's get rid of UC and let's go with a Scaroff? That would make me even more cautious if that was the case, because he's not ready at this point. That's my deal with this whole poll, whether it be, it's people's opinion, and I get it.
Yeah.
But
it's a poll. It's a very simple, broad question.
It's black and white.
And when you get into the details is where I would love to hear from more.
Exactly, because that's more like you said, a yes or no. Like,
what is
yes,
the Yaroslav
no,
Askara era? When does it start? Are we talking about now? Like if you're going to trade UC Saros, that's a lot to put on the kid right now. There's got to be another part of that equation. Mm-hmm. So we need to get into that part of the equation. That's what I try to challenge people with that mindset. That trade Saros, get the goal scorers. You got a Scaroff, he doesn't make as much money, and boom. Because another factor in, I think, from afar, if you're just answering that question without really going into depth and research on it, which, look, people have lives. Yeah. They love the team, but they have lives as well. I don't expect them to go and do the scrolls. That's why I try to do the math for them and try to explain this when they listen to the show. But this market has never watched a team have bad goaltending.
No.
And there are other markets where they have gone for decades. The Philadelphia Flyers come to mind, where they have been searching and searching and searching for the great goalie, and they never get it. And there's also this perception of, well, you can find another goalie. You can just go look at the Knights, look at the Avalanche, and that's true. But things do run in cycles, and over the next 5 to 10 years, it might cycle back to teams feeling pretty good about having a great goalie in there. And so a Scaroff might get there, but we don't.
Scaroff is going to be a great
right,
goalie.
And that's another thing that I've challenged is, okay, he looks like he's got a good chance, but there's still a ways to go before we know what he is. So we'll see. But if you trust Barry Trotz, which people do, it does sound like he's laid out the plan, which is to try to make a deal with UC Saros.
Right, because I don't think that this whole notion and idea of moving on from UC Saros is just for funsies, just because nobody believes that goaltending is important in the NHL. That's not it. It's also because, well, you got the young guy coming up as well. So is it a smart balance of assets to have both? Maybe Barry Trotz views that it is a smart balance of assets. And if that's what he believes, then okay. At this point, I do question that. But
people that say trade Saros and make way for the Yaroslav Askarov era, that is with the assumption that Askarov is on his way to being a star.
And we don't know that.
And I am not willing to give him that yet. I really hope he does, but he's a long way from there. So I would. That's the caution that I have.
And it's also with the assumption that the trade offers that you are going to get in return for UC Saros are worth your while.
That's another huge part of the variable there.
While if I'm, again, a Predator fan doing this survey, that is what I would have voted for, is trade UC Saros and make way for the Yaroslav Askarov era. I also understand that if Barry Trotz is getting a bag of peanuts in return, then maybe that's not the best path for this franchise moving forward. Because it's not about just dumping the salary and not signing UC Saros and making way for Yaroslav Askarov. It's getting something in return that you think can turn into a top forward, an elite scorer, or younger pieces to the defense. Aspects, it would turn into pieces of the formula that would get this team to a Stanley Cup contender. But go ahead, sorry.
No, I was going to say quickly, why would anybody, I'm just assessing the whole thing and looking at it, trying to look 2 steps ahead here. If I'm a GM and I know that you have this phenom in Milwaukee, and you have this, really good to elite goalie, let's just say a top 7 goalie in the league, he's entering the last year of his contract. Why in the hell am I going to offer up the world? Why? Either you're going to sign him or he's going to hit the market and I got a better opportunity to get him. And without having to give up anything, really.
Well, my question would be, if I'm Barry Trotz and you're another general manager asking that question, I would say, okay, well, good luck finding a goaltender. Good luck finding a goaltender on the market as good as UC Saros.
But my thing was,
you're the one that needs a goalie. I don't.
Right.
I'm good.
You're right. But my thing is, okay, I can just wait this out another year. I can get a goalie in there. There's somebody out there. Lankinen will be a free agent. I can sign Lankinen, and he could be my goalie, for the next year or two. And then UC goes to market, and I can then make my bid on him without having to give up the farm to get him, because it's going to cost you a lot
That's
to get
making the
UC
assumption
Saros.
that the Predators wouldn't re-sign UC Saros.
No,
also, I think a team that would be interested in the UC Saros sweepstakes this offseason, trading for him now, would be because they view themselves as Stanley Cup contenders this upcoming season.
I'm only going by
a goalie away.
You're right, but I'm only going by the question. Like trade UC Saros, let the young man come up. Again, you got to have a trade partner. If there's teams that are sitting back saying, I am not giving you what you want, because he may be worth that, but he's entering the last year of his deal, and it seems like y'all don't want to pay him the money, or y'all don't want to pay him the money that he may be worth, whether it's $8 or $9 million, whatever. I can just wait it out. And if we don't get him, fine. But that means I don't have to give up all my assets to get him.
Then who's your goalie this year?
I find a goalie. Just like this is the question Willy's been asking about everybody else.
Then why trade for Saros if you feel that you can just find a goalie?
I'm not going to trade. What I'm saying is this: I am not giving up the farm to get UC Saros, because I know he's entering the last year of his deal.
Yeah.
If you don't want to work that deal out, I can slip in with a better deal, and he's going to come to me because I'm paying him more money.
You're saying if you waited till
exactly.
the trade deadline.
If you waited through the trade deadline and was like, listen, this is our final offer. Either you take it or you leave it.
The price might come down.
Exactly. It's going to come down if you don't trade him before the trade deadline, and you're not really we're not close in regards to contracts, like the money. We're not close. Then if I'm a GM, I'm gonna wait it out.
GMs can wait it out.
Yeah,
they can wait it out.
Exactly.
You have to be okay
so the
with
price
what
could
you have
come
in
down
net until the trade deadline.
And also he could go off the market completely, right? If he signs a new deal, or if the Predators are in contention. And they might say, "Look, we're playing well. He's playing
well. So now
you're
forcing their hand. You're forcing the Predators' hand.
It's always, you never know exactly when the right time is to strike. You're trying to hope that you read it as well as you can. Most people, the argument some people say is in the summer when it's more fluid. You're not worried about the day-to-day cap, and you're more organized. You're not in the middle of the season. You can maybe mount. And look, you could say, look, I'll make the trade. And now I've got the rest of the offseason to compensate. Now I know what I need, and there's a free agent market hitting here. I can go shopping and try to compensate. Some people think that's a better time to make a trade offer, because you then can organize accordingly.
Right, and if you wait until the trade deadline, you could also make the argument of teams are more desperate because there might be a team that didn't view themselves as contenders that play a few games, for a few months, and you realize we're actually pretty good. We're just a goaltender away from being, potentially Stanley Cup champion contenders. So the price could go up, but that's a risk that Barry Trotz would have to take. Every single option, I think, in front of Barry Trotz, inherently a risk is involved. Yeah. That's decision making in the National Hockey League. That's business. That's life. But that would be the risk that Barry Trotz would take if Juuse Saros goes into this season unsigned. Is what does the trade deadline look like, and what do negotiations look like if you hold on to Juuse Saros at the trade deadline next summer when his contract is in fact up? We've got a bunch of thoughts on the Joe Rexrode Predator fan survey in The Athletic. So we'll wrap up our thoughts on the survey. We'll get into your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025-1063 The Game.
Hey, people, this is Derek Mason, and you've heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff at Cool Springs MD for some time. I know you have. If you have set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time, setting a resolution. I mean, we all do it each and every year to shed some extra pounds, only to face disappointment. Well, at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of the cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss, people. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood tests, supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you, no one else but you. Connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you, people. Cool Springs MD, where the weight loss journey becomes a success story.
Join Cromwell Media along with local athletes and musicians at Hermitage Golf Course on June 20th for the 615 Open. Make a difference while supporting Souls for Souls. Every $20 raised goes to a new pair of shoes for a local child experiencing homelessness. So sign up to play or sponsor at 615open.com. We're going through Joe Rexroad's Predators fan survey, kind of the end of the season bow on exactly the direction of the franchise, of the big question that we've been talking about over the last few weeks of what the Predators do at the goaltending position. And we have a bunch of thoughts in our text line, so we are right to you unless we have some thoughts.
Let's go to the phone.
Let's get to the phones. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to get in on the conversation. One texter says, I think what makes fans nervous is 8-year-long contracts seems like forever. If you give Saros 8 years, he'll be close to 40, and Askarov will be close to 30, and we want to see this team get younger eventually. All these good players aren't going to play this good.
Well, he won't be close to 40.
Yeah.
He'll be
30.
It depends. Like, this is another assumption that it's going to be 8 years. Mm-hmm. It might be. I think there could be a pretty legit talk of trying to make it 7. But by the end of an 8-year contract, he will be 36, 37.
36, 37, yeah.
Yeah. So that's not 40.
Not a
It's
spring
not
chicken.
40. I mean, it just depends.
And Pekka had a 7-year contract that took him from age 30 to 36. Mm-hmm. And so you have a history there of a guy that was just fine. He won the Vezina at 35.
But we can look at it like, just look. Okay, look at it like they looked at it with UC and Pekka. As Pekka started to get older, UC started to play more, and then eventually UC became the starter. Mm-hmm. I don't understand why people don't want to follow that same logic.
Because it's not the same.
It's not the same. The only reason it's not the same.
It's exactly
and
the
I
same
get it.
age-wise for Saros and Pekka. The difference is Askarov
is the first round
of his career.
But that's the big difference. That is the big difference, and I get it. That's huge. That he's your first. He's your first round pick, first round pick.
How many years were left on Pekka's 7-year deal whenever
they brought him
Saros
up?
got brought up? There was 2 years left on his deal?
No, there was like 5 years left on his deal.
When Saros was the backup?
When Saros was the backup, well, okay, so Saros is 3 years as the backup. Yeah, we're the last 3 years of Pekka's 7-year, $7 million contract. And then Pekka signed an additional 2 more years. And that's when the transition started to happen.
Yeah.
He started to play
when he was 37, 38. So...
And that's the difference.
The age difference is fairly similar. The contract difference. Pekka was, and this is the point that Joe and Robbie make, Pekka was in the midst of the long-term deal as Saros was going into that 3-year run of being the backup. Mm-hmm. So it worked out almost perfectly, right? Right as Rinne was coming to the end of the long-term deal, Saros was developed and ready to become something more, right? Didn't know if he was going to be this good, right? But you had a pretty good feeling. He is dominated as a backup, and you have an option here. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, I still think you could do it that way. And Derek, you've made this point that a lot of guys who signed long-term deals, when you sign them, okay, the last couple of years, you might have to just say the guy's aging some, but this is what it takes to keep the premier player. Mm-hmm. And if you can live with if a guy gives you 5 really good years of an 8-year deal, right? Because the cap is going to go up. It's not going to be as big a percentage on the cap in the last few years of that contract. And if he's an $8 million backup, like, for example, Jonathan Quick became a very expensive backup in the years past his prime for L.A., and it wasn't great, but they kind of had to do it that way. It does happen, right? Henrik Lundqvist became kind of a very expensive. Oh, boy, we've got Shesterkin. We've got a lot of other good goalies, and we've still got Hank, and you have the utmost respect for Hank. But he wasn't your best goalie at the time. That could happen.
And I think that we'll probably see that in the last couple of years of Philip Forsberg's deal.
Sure.
The last couple of years of Roman Yossi's deal. That's a real thing. That last couple of years, they might hurt a little bit. And that.
But I think every team goes through
every
that.
team.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ryan Getzlaf and Corey Perry with the Ducks, right? They had a great run. They got old. Jonathan Taves, Patrick Kane. They got old. But was it worth it? Like, would you rather have not had them? Like that's what I would say is let's not focus all on that and the things that is a reality. A guy is going to age, but it's either that or you don't have the guy, a premier player. Somebody is going to pay him a long-term contract.
Yes. And I think the difference is because you can either eat the last couple of years of the contract and deal with things not being very good, or you make the decision this offseason and live with what the next couple of years would look like in net until Askarov is ready. But it falls on the belief of whatever belief you might have in Askarov.
Right.
And it also falls on the return.
And the other goalie, if you're moving on from Saros.
Yeah, who's going to be the
Who is the guy?
Yeah, and that's what you would you would look at it and say, okay, 2 to 3 years at the end of Saros' contract, 2 to 3 years now until Askarov is ready. What is best for our team to become a Stanley Cup contender? One texter says his contract wouldn't age well. He's a good goalie that occasionally plays at an elite level, not the other way around. His stats up to the 18-game streak had him ranked lower than any other starting goalie in the NHL. Lankinen was actually ranked higher than UC, and I understand he played less games, but he had better stats. I don't think that we can deny that the first half of the season for UC Saros wasn't great.
Yeah.
I think this was absolutely his worst season as the starter. There's no question about it. Every stat will tell you that. But I do think that was I still think he's a good bet to be an elite goaltender for the next several years.
But
more so than Lankinen. And I'm a big fan of Lankinen. But Lankinen has never started 50 games, let alone 60 or some odd. So if you just don't believe in UC Saros, I understand that. Like if that's just your gut feeling. Because if you did, then I think everybody would. Like I don't think the Rangers or some of these other teams signing the goalie to 8 years, they're going to gladly do it. They're going to say, let's do it. They're not going to think twice about it. If you believe in the player, that's why you're willing to invest 8 years.
Well, to me, the mark of a great player is, and I'm going to use the texter's text against that person, is great players find a way out of slumps. Again, great players find a way out of slumps. Did UC find a way out of his slump? I just want to ask everybody. Did he find a way out of it?
Of course.
Yes.
Yes. Nick, did he find a way out of it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Enough said. I use your own text against you because great players, especially, take into account too, texter, this is a whole new system. A lot of guys struggled early on in this system. We saw it before, right in front of our eyes, and we were trying to figure out what's going on. It's a new system. Everybody had to figure out where their place was. How do I play in this new system? Guys getting switched around. That's what I talked about earlier in the show. Guys having to play different sides of the ice that they normally didn't play prior to coach getting here. So everybody had to adjust. Even UC Saros had to adjust. But when he adjusted, he played damn good hockey. That's a mark of a great player. They find a way out of their slump, and they play the way that they're usually accustomed to playing. And that's what UC Saros did, and that's what Philip Forsberg did, guys like that. So I am not going to take his first half of the season and say, oh, well, he's done. Look at what he did. He had a horrible season. No, he found a way out of that mess. Great players do that.
Yeah,
Those that are not great, they stay in their slump.
The fundamental question to me is, do you think you can win a Stanley Cup with UC Saros? And if the GM has to answer that question, and he consults his coach, you get a feel for the locker room. Does the locker room believe it? If the answer is yes, then to me, it's well worth the 8 years if that's what it takes. And I still think because he's coming off of a little bit of an off year, maybe you can get it to 7, and maybe you can get that. It doesn't necessarily have to be $8 million. But if your fundamental question is, can you win the Stanley Cup with UC Saros as the quarterback? Just like when the Titans had to say, can we win a Super Bowl with Steve McNair? They believed that they could, and they paid Steve McNair. There were some years at the end of Steve McNair's run with the Titans where he was banged up and he wasn't quite the same player as he was the first 2 or 3 years. But you gladly invest in those players. But if your answer is no, then I do think that changes your game plan a little bit. You might be more open to trading him, etc.
I think you absolutely can win a Stanley Cup with UC Saros. Of course,
but I sense from the texter there that he's not really all in. And I hear a lot of people. They're like, well, he's never won a playoff series. He's undersized. Okay, if those are your things,
true.
I get all things that are true. And so if you don't have that feeling, then I understand why you would say, okay, I think I'll be willing to roll the dice a different way if you don't think you can do it. I personally, I think you can win big with UC Saros as your goalie, and so I'm willing to deal with the risks of the last few years of a long-term deal.
And all of this is coupled with Askarov. You can't have the conversation about Saros, signing him to a long-term deal, the future, without Askarov.
And I personally am not as sure. I'm just not willing to go out and say he is going to be a star goalie in this league. I don't know yet. I hope. But he's a ways from doing it, and I think he could use some years under. I think he could learn a lot from UC Saros, and I think learning under UC Saros might be the best way to get him to that special level.
So I thought it was a really interesting results of the poll, of course, from Joe Rexroad's Predators fan survey. So you can check that out at The Athletic. Really interesting. And I always like to see, just to get a different vibe from how the fan base is feeling. So I'm just going to totally rip off Joe's idea of a fan survey. But I want to do it with the Titans. What's the level of optimism with Titans fans? How encouraged, how optimistic, how confident are you in Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon? And I know it's a little bit different because we don't have the year of a sample size with Brian Callahan that we do with Andrew Brunette. But just through what we've heard, what we've seen from Brian Callahan, the year of a sample size that we have from Rand Carthon, the overall optimism level for the Titans. So let's do a fan survey of our own. But as far as the Titans are concerned, we'll do that coming up next. And, of course, we'll get into your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025-1063 The Game.
Let's talk about Zen Sports, the new sportsbook in Tennessee that brings sports betting to a whole new level, and I mean that literally, people. When you sign up for Zen Sports, you'll automatically earn up to $1,000 no danger first wager. If your first bet loses, you'll be reimbursed for the amount of your bet up to $1,000. Also, Zen Sports offers true odds on all parlays and boosted same-game parlays for all Tennessee sports teams. That means boosted up to 20% over other books in Tennessee. Man, you can't beat that. And there's even more good news because we love good news on a Monday. Zen Sports offer a one-of-a-kind VIP reward program. If you qualify, you'll earn monthly comps at sporting events, concerts, you name it, even sport book bonuses. And we have a lot of concerts here in Nashville, so you need to get signed up for Zen Sports people in their VIP program, which is by invite only. So if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for the VIP consideration, check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. So what are you waiting for? The daily same game parlay boost go quickly. So get going and download their app at zensports.com today. That's Zen Sports, where betting just got better. And remember, gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app. We're streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. And we are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. We'll catch up with TD, Teron Davenport, in 1 hour. OTAs start tomorrow, so we'll kind of get a pulse, a vibe for what TD is looking for in OTAs. But I want to kind of look back on what we talked about last hour. Joe Rexrode put out his fan survey results for the Predators, kind of getting a temperature of the fan base, where they are on Barry Trotz, on Andrew Burnett, on the vision of the franchise moving forward, the plan, a la Willy, the goaltending position, all those kinds of things, just kind of where the Predators fans are at. But I thought it would be interesting if we did one of our own as far as the Titans are concerned. Because the Titans, although they're not in the same position, we haven't gotten a year of a sample size from Brian Callahan like we have from Andrew Burnett. So it's a lot easier for us to say that, yeah, we're optimistic about what Andrew Burnett can do because he got this team to the playoffs in year one, in a year that Barry Trotz said, look, be patient with us. It might not be pretty at all times. But I do think that there are overlaps, there are similarities. New general manager, Rand Carthon 1 year in, Barry Trotz 1 year in of Andrew Burnett, brand new coach in Brian Callahan. A lot of questions about what the future holds. Young quarterback for the Tennessee Titans, some young pieces at least for the Predators, and we'll see what direction the Predators decide to go in terms of youth, or run it back with the proven serial winners, as Barry Trotz would call them. So I think let's start with how Joe started in his article. Which choice best describes your feeling about the current state of the Predators? So let's apply that to the Titans. Which choice best describes your feeling about the current state of the Predators? Titans. Highly optimistic, cautiously optimistic, somewhat pessimistic, highly pessimistic, or apathetic?
Cautiously optimistic. Because we got to see how all this stuff gels out. Now, did they go and, fill some holes with some good players? Not just fill them, just to be filling the hole, but they, put good players, or they brought in good players to, handle those responsibilities, whether it be on the offensive line, in the secondary, at the wide receiver position. They brought in guys that have played really good football in this league. Mm-hmm. And then you have a first-year head coach who seems to, at least has won the press conference, at least. But it seems like his vision is a vision that many Titans fans have been wanting to hear for the longest. More innovative. Getting to this era of passing the ball rather than relying so heavy on the run. And then the GM and coach relationship. And I think just a relationship from top to bottom. It seems like, everybody is on the same page. Everybody's communicating. So, young quarterback still has to develop into, a franchise guy, and they need to find that out very quickly. But I think they've made some moves to make this team better on paper. And all we need to see is, hopefully that, on paper becomes on the field as far as what we think of them, and ultimately what we will see of them, because they went and got some really good players. They really did. Now it's about gelling and having that chemistry, and then everybody learning this new offense on the offensive side of the ball, and on the defensive side of the ball, them learning a new defense and how to play within this defense and what your responsibilities are. So I think this is a good team. But we've seen good teams on paper not win. So, I'm cautiously optimistic about this season moving forward.
I will say cautiously optimistic. I think because I think in general I'm an optimistic guy. It's a little tougher to answer these questions on this particular poll than it is for the Predators, because I feel like Rand Carthon, his first year was really under the Mike Vrabel direction. I think he was feeling his way. Like Barry Trotz, he came in, I think he had pretty much the carte blanche to make the changes. Like he was the guy that, okay, here are the tools. We just got you these draft picks. We made these trades. what do you think? Like, I think he could have chosen to feel it out for a year, maybe keep John Hines, see how it went. Could have kept Matt Duchene. Could have kept Ryan Johansson just for a year. Say, hey, look, I'm new. I'm just going to see. Yeah. Hey, the team played well at the end of the year last year. Let's just see how it goes this year. And he made some pretty bold moves. I don't think Rand Carthon, had he wanted to do that, could have done that, right? He wasn't going to come in and fire Mike Vrabel. And if anything, he was trying to find his role, find his place in a Mike Vrabel-dominated, environment, right? Fair to say?
Yeah,
now,
he probably deferred to Vrabel.
I almost look as Carthon and now Callahan, this is really, in a year, that's when this poll, I think, is really going to be an interesting one to do. But so I'll say, look, I see a direction that they're trying to do.
Yeah.
I see what they're trying to do with Levis. I'm cautiously optimistic about Levis. So I'll just say cautiously optimistic, right?
It's different.
But I think it's interesting to sort of define the differences between the two situations.
It's different because we have a year of the structure of Barry Trotz and Andrew Brunette. Well, we have a year of Rand Carthon as the general manager of the Tennessee Titans. This is the first year of a different power structure, I think is fair to say. Although Rand Carthon still is the general manager in title, Amy Adams-Strunk came out and said he is making final personnel decisions.
Right.
Who was making personnel decisions last year?
Right.
Like, I don't know.
Think about the difference of Trotz coming in and making a bold move, firing a coach that he admitted he thought did a pretty good job at the end of that season last year. And there were some young guys saying, well, maybe he still made the tough call to change the coach. Rand Carthon was not going to change Mike Vrabel. He could have, if he had all the decisions, he could have said, hey, look, it's an aging team. Let's see if we can move on from Ryan Tannehill and move on from, and in the middle of the season, he did move on from Kevin Byard, move on from Derrick Henry. Kind of like they decided, hey, look, it was stale. We're going to make a bold move. We're moving on from Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson. It's going to cost us. We're not getting dollar for dollar. We're losing out in the short term, but we think it's worth it for what we're going to open up. I don't think that Rand Carthon could have done that, even if he wanted to, right? I think Mike Vrabel would have put his foot down and said, whoa. I'm trying to win here, right? That's what fair. They decided to do, to stand pat and try to run up the hill one more time with this. And I don't blame him for doing it. I'm not saying that was the wrong move, but it's very different than, because he didn't have the I think the ability to do that. Rand Carthon. Do we agree?
No, yeah, I don't think he had.
And I don't know if he wanted to do it or not. I just don't think he had I think he had to come in and say, I'm going to feel it out. Mike Vrabel's the man. Let me see if I can help him out.
Like, there were certain moves that I think, just using our context clues and what we know about the players and the backgrounds of Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel, we can say, okay, that was a Vrabel move. That was a Rand Carthon move. Like Daniel Brunskill coming in from the 49ers. Probably a Rand Carthon move, if I can venture to say that. And there were certain things that we could look at and say that was a Mike Vrabel move. Now, I think the Derrick Henry conversation is a very interesting one. Did Rand Carthon come in and say it's probably time to move on from Derrick Henry? I don't know. Would Mike Vrabel have vetoed that conversation or that decision? I don't know, but I would venture to guess probably. I don't know. See, that is what is difficult about this. If we're going to compare,
that would have been a hard sell.
The Predators.
If you want, it'd been a radical but a hard sell. So how would you answer it? Are you cautiously optimistic? Are you pessimistic?
Can I use a cop out and just say that I'm cautious? Like, I'm not pessimistic.
That would be a cop out because that's not one of the choices.
Exactly.
This is my survey, Willie.
No. You already said what your answer, your questions were.
We didn't get a chance to get just cautious.
Exactly.
You can do whatever you want.
Can I say incomplete, like Daniel Simpson Day in the Delta House?
That is a cop out.
Oh no,
that is a cop out. See, because I'm not pessimistic necessarily, because I do think that there are enough pieces, like you said, D-Mase, on paper, to make me think that this team will at least be improved from last year. Now, what improved from last year would be is, it could be several different things. I think the secondary is upgraded. Absolutely. You add Chidobe Awuzie, you trade for L'Jarius Sneed. Secondary, better. Wide receiver room, better. You add Calvin Ridley, you add Tyler Boyd, some veterans with a decent amount of experience. You add Tyler Boyd, who's been nothing but consistent and available in his career. Wide receiver core is upgraded. But what about the pass rush? Because you lost Danico Autry in his double-digit sacks. Can Tavondre Sweat, can Tavondre Sweat come in and replace those? I don't know the answer to that question, but I can be optimistic about Harold Landry.
Yeah.
Maybe looking better this year than he did last year, now that he's a full 2 years removed from the ACL. I feel encouraged about the offensive line because of who's coaching it and Bill Callahan, and also the addition of Lloyd Cushenberry alone makes this offensive line better. So there are a lot of things that give me reason for optimism, but also a lot of reasons to just be cautious. And that number one reason is Will Levis. I don't know if I'm cautiously optimistic or pessimistic about Will Levis. I don't think I'm on either side of the equation. I think I'm just right smack dab in the middle of seeing some bad things, seeing some pretty good things, but really we're in wait and see mode. And that's not fun. Like, that's not a good position to be in. Or, I'm not going to say it's not a good position to be in because it's not a bad position to be in. I think it's a frustrating position for fans to be in, that we all want to know the answer right now today. Is Will Levis a franchise quarterback? But we're not going to know.
No.
We're not going to know week 1. We're probably not going to know week 2. It's going to take the entirety of the season, and even at the end of the season, we still might not have a definitive answer. So it is a cop-out, but I'm going to say that I am just cautious. Not pessimistic, not optimistic, just cautious.
I think there are a lot of teams that are in that boat, or a lot of fan bases that are in that boat of being, cautious about their, upcoming season with their team, or cautiously optimistic. There are probably only a handful of teams that, fan bases think, oh, I feel good about my team. Why? Because it's the quarterback, because of the quarterback.
Yeah.
You look at Miami, you look at New England, you look at the Jets. They're cautiously, all three of those teams are cautiously optimistic, for different reasons, but it all pertains to their quarterback. Every one of them pertains to their quarterback. Miami, can Tua lead you to a Super Bowl? Can he get in December? Can he play outside of Miami?
Buffalo,
yeah. No, I'm saying Miami.
I know, but Buffalo, I believe, would also kind of fall into that category of
now
can Josh Allen get
exactly.
to the promised
Can
land?
he beat Patrick Mahomes? You look at New England Patriots. Is Jaden Daniels the guy?
Drake May,
not Jaden Daniels. He went to Washington. The Jets. How will Aaron Rodgers look after coming off an
If
Achilles
any Jets
tear?
fan isn't cautious, I don't know.
That's what I'm
I mean,
saying.
Yeah.
So I think
I
a
was
lot
gonna
of
say, if
teams,
any Patriots fan is optimistic,
Yeah.
you might be.
but I'm saying
might be sipping
everybody.
on
I think everybody
Kool-Aid.
has cause.
Everybody has
can
that
justify
pause,
being cautious.
except Kansas City and probably San Fran.
You can talk
and
trash a little
Baltimore.
bit if you're
it's
those
probably
teams.
even Baltimore to an extent. Their fan base is probably like, yeah, we love our team, but man,
What happens in the big
Jackson,
game? We got to get over the hump.
We got to get over the hump of that big game. We can't do things that's going to mess up the game for us. So, the Titans fall right in play with these other teams that in their fan bases that, okay, yeah, we feel good about our team, but we're also cautious because of what? The quarterback. I think if Will Levis was a little bit more established with the guys that they brought to this team, I think we will be looking at this team a little bit different. If he was the starter whole season last year, and yeah, he had some rookie games, but more times than not, he went out there and he performed at a level that is winning. Mm-hmm. Then I think you go into the next season like, okay, I feel good about this team moving forward, but it didn't happen. He only played a handful of games. He got hurt. He looked good in some. He didn't look good in others. Now, there were other circumstances probably involved with him not playing well, the offensive line, and not having consistent pass catchers other than D-Hop. But every fan base is right, or should be right where we are as a fan base, cautiously optimistic.
And those levels of caution and levels of optimism, those vary.
Yeah, they do.
If you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan, of course you're going to be cautious because Joe Burrow has struggled to stay healthy.
Yeah.
But my level of optimism in Cincinnati would be much higher than it is here. Mm-hmm. When there are questions about the quarterback.
But it all pertains to the quarterback.
Our questions about, is the quarterback a franchise certified starting quarterback in the National Football League? Those aren't the questions that they're having in Cincinnati.
No.
Those aren't the questions that they're having with the New York Jets fans. Different reasons for caution, but a lot, maybe more reasons for optimism. Tim is on the line with a thought on Will Levis being the guy. What's up, Tim?
Not much. How y'all guys doing?
Good.
Doing good.
My whole deal with Will Levis, I'm a big Vanderbilt fan. Will Levis couldn't beat Vanderbilt. He couldn't find receivers open against Vanderbilt's D, and that's pitiful. And if you can't beat Vanderbilt, how are you going to win the NFL?
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.
I gotta have a feeling Tim's lying about being a Vanderbilt fan.
I
He's
can't
actually a
say
Tennessee
that,
fan.
okay? Listen,
Thank you, Tim.
there were a lot of circumstances with Will Levis, especially his last season.
You think his offensive line was bad with the Titans last year?
It was bad
It
last
was
year.
bad at
Yeah,
Kentucky.
so we
And he had
can't-
2 freshman receivers at Kentucky.
Exactly. So we can't look at it and say they couldn't beat Vanderbilt, so he can't win in the NFL. There's a few players that didn't play well versus Vanderbilt.
Anthony
but that
Richardson
doesn't
didn't
mean-
beat Vanderbilt, and he
That
was the
doesn't
third
mean
overall
they can't
pick.
play in the NFL. Yeah, that's just college.
Well, you could flip it too. Like Jay Cutler didn't have a lot of wins as a starting quarterback at Vanderbilt, but if you watched him play, he was elevating
The team.
a very, very It was the very beginning of Bobby Johnson's tenure. They didn't have much around him either. I mean, Earl Bennett was a freshman. He was one of the best receivers they've ever had, but he was a freshman on Jay Cutler's senior year. So it was not easy for Jay to win. So you could have said, well, Jay Cutler, he didn't win anything at Vanderbilt, but he ended up being a way better starter than Vince Young or Matt Leinart, the two guys that were picked in the first round
Especially
the same
Matt
year of
Leinart,
him.
goodness.
Yeah.
And some of the
So
best.
there's a lot of variables in there that you can't just make an assessment, particularly about one game.
Yeah.
My gosh.
He couldn't be Vandy.
Yeah.
If you can't be Vandy, you can't play in the NFL.
That's it.
That's it.
Case closed.
Done.
Case closed.
Close the
Couldn't
book.
be Tennessee either.
Exactly.
Welcome to NFL General Manager School. That's all you
Did
need
you beat
to know.
Vandy? No. We're
Nope.
not. Take him off the
Yeah.
draft
Cross
board.
them off.
But we didn't even play Vanderbilt. Doesn't matter.
It don't matter.
Doesn't matter.
You didn't beat him?
Hey,
Should've
D-Mase,
beat him
in the
anyway.
video game I did. I'm like, hey, not in real life, no.
But it's the same, ridiculous thing that Tennessee fans say all the time. Well, he looked horrible against the Vols. He went to Kentucky, so we don't like him. Please, get out of here. I don't know how sterling Josh Allen's resume at Wyoming was in his time, but Josh Allen, pretty good NFL
Patrick
quarterback.
Mahomes didn't have a great career. They didn't win a lot of games and bowl games and national championships when he was at Texas Tech. Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah.
and look at him now.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. He lost to Vandy. Well, he didn't play Vandy. So they shouldn't have drafted him. He didn't play
didn't beat
Vandy.
Vandy.
He didn't beat Vandy, so they shouldn't have drafted him.
Can't win if you don't play.
I'm messing with you, Tim. Don't worry about it.
All right, coming up next, because I do want to get back into this conversation, but coming up next, I do want to address another question that kind of goes into our optimism, pessimism, overall vibe for the Tennessee Titans. And one reason why I'm cautious, not pessimistic, not optimistic, but cautious, is J.C. Latham. Can he seamlessly make that move from right tackle to left tackle? Can he be a starting NFL caliber left tackle? What one former NFL general manager had to say about it. We'll get into that coming up next. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We'll get back into your phones as well. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We are brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
Props for Mr. Donick here on our Take It to the Bank on Friday. 2 for 2. Perfect score. Bingo. We take it to the bank every Friday at 1:45, and it's brought to you by F&M Bank. And that's what I want to tell you about. Banking made easy on purpose. Open your door to great opportunities and financial freedom. F&M Bank's team of dedicated financial experts is committed to guiding you every step of the way. F&M Bank aims to provide a seamless process completely tailored to your unique needs. And everybody's different. You might be a little younger, a little older. You might be a business owner. You might have different needs than others. F&M Bank knows this, and they're ready to help you. So get in touch with F&M Bank's friendly team today. The way you do it is just go to their website, myfmbank.com. They've got 20 locations across Middle Tennessee and up into southern Kentucky to get you started. myfmbank.com. They aim to be right in the middle of your community. They want to help you, and it's banking made easy on purpose. You stick to that, you're going to be good. myfmbank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Purchase your tickets right now for the Music City Grand Prix at the Nashville Superspeedway on Friday, September 13th through Sunday, September 15th at musiccitygp.com. As the racing station, 1025 The Game has a special offer for a limited time. Use promo code GAME, G-A-M-E, for a 20% discount right now through June 16th. You can also tune in for the Indy 500 race on 1025 The Game on Sunday, May 26th. So we're talking about kind of stealing Joe Rexroad's idea, so thank you, Joe, about the current temperature of the fan base, the fan survey about the Nashville Predators. So we're going to take that idea and apply that same logic to the Tennessee Titans. And I think we all are kind of in the same boat. There's a certain level of unknown. There's a certain level of, I think it's going to work, but I don't know. Or I don't think it's going to work, but I don't know. Just so much about the Tennessee Titans that has just kind of put us in wait and see mode, which kind of leads us to feeling cautious, but also optimistic given the moves that the Titans have made in the offseason, but a certain level of caution of Brian Callahan, first-time head coach, Brian Callahan, first-time play caller, Denard Wilson, first-time defensive coordinator. Doesn't mean it's not going to work. It just means that we don't know. And no, I don't know, I think is an okay answer.
Also, I think you could direct it, as Joe often says, the precise wording of the poll question makes a difference. Like I'm optimistic that they will be good in a couple years. I feel like they have a chance. I'm not super optimistic about having a ton of success this year.
Titans.
The Titans.
Okay.
Is that fair? Like my expectations in 2 years are a lot different than they are for this year.
Would a ton of success be? Like making the playoffs?
That's also arbitrary. That's different to different people. To me, a successful season this year, if they won 9 games, I would consider that a really big success. That's going to be bigger. What did we say? Didn't we look at a odds maker somewhere along the line for over under, and you found a 6.5? Like I think 6.5 is going to be not completely out of bounds. You might see some 7.5s. Mm-hmm. So if they won 7, that's more than they won last year. I could say that is better.
And also, like we touched on last week, Willy,
it's all how they look, right? And how does Levis look at the end of the season? These are all. So I'm not that worried about what happens this year, but I am worried. 2 years is really when you've got to. I want to see what the roster looks like in 2 years. That's when, again, at the end of this year, I think this will be a great time for this poll with some of the specifics they did for the Preds. 1 year into this coach GM tandem.
My thing is, if they don't win over 8 games, it's a disappointment to me.
You think they're that good on paper? Like you're going to be different than most people that predict.
I think they're that good on paper, and I'm looking at the strength of schedule. I forget. I think it was PFF I was reading, and they charted down the strength of schedule, and I think the Titans were like 40s. They had a 42%, like their schedule ranked like 42% somewhere around there, or they ranked 22nd or 23rd hardest schedule in the national.
32nd being the easiest.
Yeah, 32nd being the easiest schedule, and they were in their like mid 20s with their schedule. So if we look at it, their schedule on paper looks easier because they were the last place team in AFC South. So they're going to get. It's not like they're not playing teams that the other teams are playing, but they just get them home when you get them, stuff like that. So their schedule works out to be a little bit easier than a lot of other teams. They don't have to play, I think, as many playoff teams from the previous season. But to me, with the moves that they've made, has showed me that this is not a win a Super Bowl now, but it's we want to win now. The moves that they made. They went and got a damn good center. They needed one. They went and got it. They went and got a left tackle. In the draft, whether you say he's a right tackle moving on, whatever, he's their left tackle right now. They went and got a running back to replace or help. I say replace Derrick Henry, but it's not really to replace Derrick Henry. You have to have another good runner in the backfield and not just Tajay Spears, your second-year running back.
It's filling that position, not necessarily that role.
Absolutely. It's filling that position with a good player. Yeah. What did you do at the wide receiver position? Well, you went and got 2 good players. What did you do at the cornerback position? You really got 2 starters, 2 good players. So what you've done, what you do in the draft, you went and got what we hope and assume to be a really good interior lineman. And so these moves that they've made has told me, indicated to me, this is the team that wants to win now. So if you want to win now, I'm not talking, everybody wants to win a Super Bowl that year the season's played. But we know everybody can't if you're being realistic about it. But the moves that they made showed me they want to win now. They want to win more than 7 games. They want to win more than 8 games. They're putting this team together to win more than 8 games, to then next year add on to what they have this year and then grow that. They're not doing this to win 6-7 games. And if they win less than 6 or 7 games, it should be a disappointment to everybody because they went out and they spent the money on certain positions that were weak spots on their team.
That should help you be competitive.
Exactly. That's how I'm looking at it.
It should keep you from being just bottoming out and picking in the top 5. But as we know, injuries can change all that. But I still don't see a ceiling that is much higher than maybe eking in.
Well, you never know because
you never know. That's the beauty of the NFL is there's always a team. You're like, wait a minute, I didn't see that coming.
But do we expect them to win 13, 14 games? No. But I do expect them to win more than 8, to win 8 games or more. That I do expect. If you win less than 8 games, then you need to change your quarterback, and we got some other problems. Realistic, because if you come back with another season,
do that.
If you come back with another season under 8 wins, that's not good.
Yeah.
And you win it all. You went and got these players, these good players, to fill holes on your roster. If you can't win 8 games or more, yeah, we need to revisit this and say, hey, listen, something needs to change. It needs to change quickly.
We know that if Amy Adams-Strunk is pumping as much money into this team this offseason as she is, we know that Amy Adams-Strunk can have a short fuse. If she gets frustrated about the results, I'm not calling for anyone to get fired, but I'm just saying we've seen in recent history, if Amy Adams-Strunk doesn't like the result, she has no problem with pulling the plug, maybe even prematurely.
Right. That lowers my level of optimism, because that would be short-sighted to say, well, I spent all this money, we should be winning right now. I still think,
but you know, that's how majority. That's how it is.
Short-sighted to fire
I don't
John
care
Robinson
how
after the
optimistic
Eagles
you are;
game.
they're not going to win more than about 9. I don't think, and barring a miracle, it'd be an unbelievable story if they won more than that.
What if
but the
Will
question
Levis
is,
is
what does your roster look like in 2 years? And if you've got an aging D-Hop, if you got if you have more of a veteran team, it's a little bit like the gamble that the Predators did coming in with Nyquist and O'Reilly and Shen. You add veterans, okay. Those guys are going to only get older, so you have to build the young nucleus around them. You got more positions in a football situation than you do in a hockey situation. That's what I'm still not seeing with this roster that concerns me in 2 or 3 years. The young pieces, they don't have very many right now.
And you can't get younger today.
No.
There's only one way to get younger.
It was their only choice,
Yeah.
was to spend a lot of money. They had it, and they went and got as many guys as they could. But that's only going to take you so far.
And to your point about, you think it would take a miracle for the Titans to win, what did you say, 9 games?
No, not a miracle to win 9. Over 9. That would be a pretty amazing feat if they won more than 9.
Of course.
I would agree.
Yeah.
But what if I told you Will Levis will be a top 8 quarterback in the NFL this upcoming season? I don't think that's going to happen. Is it in the cards? Potentially.
I don't think so. I'd be stunned. Look, I'm optimistic. I just don't think he'll be that good this year. I think he's going to have some ups and downs. I think he's going to look good in some weeks and not so good. But I think if we're saying we're going for a miracle, I just think we're setting the bar too high. I just think there's going to be some growing pains.
I just don't know. And I would, if I had to bet on today, what does Will Levis's year look like this year? I would say it's going to look good at times. It's going to look not so great at times. We're going to be really encouraged some days.
Because we've seen him play. It's not like we've never seen him play. He did get to play last year, which was we weren't sure when the season started last year he would play. Remember, that was one of our 10 questions. Will Levis start a game? Because they had Malik Willis. There was this whole, well, Malik's the backup. Will Levis is the 3rd-string quarterback. Like, is he going to play?
He's still with the Titans.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but they have Mason Rudolph. You know what I'm saying? But at least we've seen Levis play enough where I feel like, okay, I've seen him play. I think a next step would be better than last year, but a huge leap, I'm not willing to be that optimistic. I'd love to see it.
I wouldn't bet on it.
He's got some tools, but I wouldn't bet on it.
And I think the other thing, too, is 2 years ago when the Titans went on that epic collapse, that's what the Jags needed to make the playoffs. The Jags wouldn't have won the division and would not have made the playoffs had the Titans not lost 7 games in a row. Never know who might be able to give you a little bit of help around the division. And again, you can't count on that. You can't say, well, I'll feel great about this team because the Jags fired their general manager in the middle of the season and went on an epic collapse. But I would tend to agree with you that more than 9 wins, that's probably a far cry. But I'm not saying that it's impossible, just because there are a lot of things that I'm skeptical about that could all work out great and all work out great at the same time and at the right time. I just don't know.
I mean, no one knows, how this thing is going to shake out in regards to a record. But I'm just looking at how they're piecing this team together as we speak. The moves that they made, their schedule, what do you think about the quarterback or whatnot? I think this team should win at least 8 games. Now, how many after that they're going to win? I don't know. But I think this team should at least win 8 games. I think this is a team that can win 8 games. They're good enough on paper to win 8 games. Will Levis, under this system, will have a good season. I do predict that. He will have a good season. Why? Because you surrounded him with 3 veteran guys that know how to play football the right way, that understands, about studying and watching film and getting with the quarterback and talking with the quarterback and understanding, you two understanding the language the same way, and both are on the same page. So I look at that from that standpoint and say, Will Levis, if you can't do it with these 3 receivers, then you can't do it at all. Seriously. And, I don't think these 3 receivers that they have are more so on the other side than the front side, with the exception of probably Calvin Ridley. When you look at Tyler Boyd or D-Hop, D-Hop has had a great career thus far. But he's on the tail end. Not to say he can't come back and have a good season like he did last year, but he's more so on the tail end. Tyler Boyd, more so on the tail end. Calvin Ridley is that guy that's sort of in the middle. Like, he's not on the tail end, but he's not at the beginning. But it does seem like he's still ascending. Now, how high is that ceiling, from here on out? I don't know. But it does seem like he's still ascending a little bit. When will it taper off? I don't know. So you look at these 3 guys, all different skill set. If you can't do it with these 3 guys, you can't do it. We need to go get somebody else. So you should be able to, you should be able to at least have a good season as a quarterback. Your interceptions shouldn't be, you shouldn't have 13, 14 interceptions as a quarterback in this offense. You shouldn't, your completion rate shouldn't be under 60 in this offense. Why? Because you have 3 really good pass catchers. Even though Ridley did drop the ball a little bit too much last year, but you have 3 really good proven pass catchers. So even with just that alone, you should be better than what you were last year if you are that guy. If you're not that guy, you're not going to get better no matter who they throw out there. But I do believe that this is going to be the year that we see Will Levis take a step forward and start to become the quarterback that they think he can become and will become.
And if he doesn't, you got some
if he doesn't, you got to pivot and go in another direction.
Yeah,
plain and simple.
If he is not the guy, go find the guy.
Yeah, you got to find him.
Write to your phones on this coming up next. 615-737-1025. TD in 15 minutes. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. All right, we will catch up with TD, Teron Davenport, in just over 10 minutes. So we'll run all of this past TD of kind of what are our fair assumptions for the Titans, for Will Levis, kind of taking a page from Joe Rexroad's playbook of the Nashville Predators fan survey, conducting our own fan survey of the Tennessee Titans. What's your optimism or maybe even pessimism level for this team going into the first year of the Brian Callahan era? But I want to get into our thoughts on this. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to get in on the conversation. Roy is on the line with a thought on Will Levis. What's up, Roy?
What's up, y'all? Tighten up, by the way. So, my thoughts about Levis, and a lot of fans, and I'm not going to knock the college fans. I'm an Auburn fan, by the way, so I don't have a horse in this race. But the Vols fans out there especially, they they're down on him. A lot of folks wanted Hooker, and now Hooker's sitting behind Jared Goff and probably won't see a snap of play at all unless Goff gets injured. But with Will Levis, his last 2 years of playing, his last year with Tennessee and his last year at Kentucky, two things stand out. Terrible offensive lines, garbage. And I think his last year with Kentucky, he was injured and still played. Now, if you look at his 21-22 season, Kentucky was 10-3, 5-3 in the SEC East. The only team ahead of them was Georgia, 14-1 that year, 8-0. Tennessee was below them. Vanderbilt was in the sewer like they normally are. So
Hey, hold on, wait.
If you go back to the 21-22 season and look at the tape and look what this guy did, he's electric, and he's a ball player. The guy has heart. He wants to play football, and I think with them adding those weapons, granted they're older guys, but they're crafty vets, and these guys know how to play wide receiver. And I'm not just saying going out there catching balls and scoring touchdowns. These guys know how to run the routes. They know how to get the positive yards, and no, D-Hop last year, a lot of his plays, not all of them, but there were some plays that could have been offensive pass interference, but he's so crafty at what he does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a skill set that you just can't, learn. You have to be a ball player. And what I'm saying, Levis, you put a good offensive line on him. Go back and watch that 21-22 season in Kentucky. Don't go back to the last 2 years with Tennessee and the last year in Kentucky, because that's what a lot of folks do. Oh, it's terrible. His numbers are bad. His interceptions. You would be, too, if you're running for your freaking life. I'm not comparing him to Jake Locker. Jake Locker's last year in Washington, it was kind of the same thing with Kentucky's Will Levis' last year in Kentucky. He was running for his life. But the year before that, Locker's last year in Washington, if he would have went out in that draft, that year, he may have got chose a little bit sooner.
Yeah,
but,
all good points, and appreciate your call, Roy. Thanks for calling in. When we talk about college quarterbacks or just college players in general, but specifically quarterbacks, if we're going to talk about the win-loss stats, I have a hard time getting on board with, well, his team wasn't good, so I don't think that he is very good. There was one thing that stuck out to me, a few things that stuck out to me, Will Levis' career at Kentucky. But as the caller mentioned, 21-22, that was a great season for Will Levis and for Kentucky. This isn't a dig, but it's not very frequent that you see Kentucky winning 10 games a season. The next year, Kentucky was average. They lost to Vanderbilt, as a caller pointed out earlier this hour. There was one game, Kentucky was on the road at Ole Miss. Will Levis's finger was at a 90-degree angle in a way that it's not supposed to bend. Will Levis got off the field, they taped up the finger, and he went back out there and he finished the game. Did Kentucky win that game? No, they did not. Did Kentucky have a very good season? No, they did not. There's several reasons because of that. New offensive coordinator, bad offensive line, true freshman receivers as his number 1 and number 2 targets. Was it just Will Levis? No. Was he a factor in it? Yeah, probably, because he's the quarterback. But things like that Will Levis's finger was broken, and he went back out and finished the game, those are things that you can't teach, and those are things that you can't coach. Yeah. Does that mean that he's going to be a franchise quarterback just because he has a certain level of toughness that you don't see a lot? No, it doesn't. But those are things that I can take away from in a year that's not very favorable for that team or that quarterback in college that translates to the NFL level.
Well, quarterbacks you evaluate different from everybody else on the field. And if you look at Will Levis, what is that team if he's not on the field 2 years ago, and what is that team when he's on the field? They were a bad team. They were a young team his senior year. Offensive line wasn't good. He lost playmakers. But him not on that field would have meant probably 3 or 4 more losses. So him on the field, he accounts for at least 3 wins alone by himself at Kentucky. And that's how you have to look at it. It's not necessarily, oh, his team didn't win, so he's not. No, look at that team minus him on the field. If that team takes a big step back when he's not on the field, then you got yourself a player. Because I believe that if he's on the field, he accounts more for wins than anything else. That was in college. So when you're evaluating quarterbacks, and then there are other things that you evaluate too, but I'm just saying you can't look at the win-loss record and say, oh my goodness, because there were a bunch of guys that won in college, quarterbacks that couldn't, sniff, a cent in the NFL at the quarterback position. They just couldn't.
Jameis Winston won the Heisman. And
exactly.
I don't think he has a job right now.
Well,
Exactly.
I think that's what I would say is at a certain point, it's nice to go back and say, well, this is what he did in college, and remember all these special things. But it becomes less and less relevant
Exactly.
the longer he's
you're
in the
NFL,
league.
longer.
And I would even say, and we had this huge debate. You missed our debate,
man.
the top 10 picks in each draft, right? I think it becomes less relevant where you were picked, and it becomes more like, can you play or not, right? But of course, we were evaluating the value of the top 10 picks and how often those hit and how often they don't hit. But to go back and say he didn't beat Vanderbilt, or remember he had this great game against so-and-so, or Marcus Mariota went head-to-head with Jameis Winston, and is it really relevant now? I don't think so. It's now like, let's see if the guy can play. Yeah. It's a different game. The pro game is a different game.
Totally. And is Will Levis going to have a longer leash because of what he did in Kentucky in 2021? No.
Not at all.
Will Levis is going to be evaluated by what he does this year.
As a Titan.
And I think this just kind of leads into how badly all of us, fans included, just want an answer so badly of whether Will Levis is a franchise quarterback or not. Is, well, you see, in 2021, no, nobody cares anymore. What do you do for this team this season when there are what we believe factors around him that set him up for a certain level of success? TD, Teron Davenport, will join us coming up next. I want to get TD's thoughts on this, about Will Levis, about the fair expectations for the Titans and for Brian Callahan, for Rand Carthon going into the season. We'll get into that with TD coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Let me tell you about Dr. Lodge and Cool Springs MD people and their staff, okay? If you set out to lose some weight, as we all have at one point in time, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. So you're not in this boat alone. We've all, set resolutions to lose weight or set a goal to lose weight only to be disappointed at the end. I've been through it. We have all been through it. So you're not alone. At Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. So you got people that want to help you if you're in this boat, people. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood tests, supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you. No one else. Not your wife, not your husband, kids. No, you. They will tailor something and customize it just for you. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today and schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. Again, I am going to reiterate that. It's going to be for you and no one else. So give them a call or go to their website at CoolSpringsMD.com. That's CoolSpringsMD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game, and the Game Nashville app. We're streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. We've got the Titans schedule release. We've got some 2003 divisional round playoff games
That's
played
right.
in the studio.
Oh, we're going back down
Titans,
memory lane
Steelers,
right now.
Going down memory lane. And, of course, we've got OTAs starting tomorrow. Joining us now to break all of it down is TD, Teron Davenport, brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD, appreciate you for joining us today. Before we get into, some of the expectations for the Tennessee Titans, we've kind of been going over that over the last hour. Haven't been able to talk with you since the Titans schedule was released. What do you think about it? What stands out to you about the Titans 2024 schedule?
It's a pretty cool schedule. It's got the early bye. I think that Dolphins game, week 4, the only primetime one, that's a key game. Then you look at the 4 out of the 5 last games are going to be AFC South divisional games. So it's one of those things where it's kind of a roller coaster, but if they could just kind of slow and steady go through the schedule, I think they'll be all right. I think 8 wins is probably where 8 to 9 wins is where I would put them.
Okay. Interesting that you bring that up because we were talking about that in the last segment when D-Mace's point was, and correct me if I'm wrong, D-Mace, the moves that the Titans have made in the offseason, those aren't win 6 games, 7 games, and be okay with it kind of moves. You don't trade for L'Jarius Sneed. You don't sign Calvin Ridley. You don't sign Lloyd Cushenberry just to be, below average to bat. So, when you say 8 to 9 wins, what gives you... What would give you optimism that 8 to 9 wins is a fair projection for this team?
Well, I mean, just going through the schedule and kind of going game by game. Now, obviously, it's super early, but to me, it's the defense. I think that defense is going to be outstanding. And I really like the vibe that Denard Wilson seems to have brought to the building. I enjoyed talking to the coaches, Tracy Rocker, Steven Jackson. Obviously, Chris Harris was already there. You look at, some of the other defensive coaches, Coach Lo Locust. I think it's a really good foundation for something to start. And then you look at the additions. That secondary has been revived. And I think Chidobe Awuzie and L'Jarius Sneed, that's room for excitement, right? And the addition of Devondre Sweat, that's something to be excited about. And Kenneth Murray and Cedric Gray, I think there's a lot to be excited about on the defense.
We're talking to Teron Davenport. Teron, what other areas do you think this team needs to upgrade at? Because I look at what they've done in the offseason, and Caroline was right. The moves that they made, I don't think those were moves to win 6 or 7 games. I think those were moves to put yourself in a position to make the playoffs. Now, what they do when they get the playoffs is a different story. But I think the moves that they made was to put themselves in a position to get into the playoffs. But what other moves you think they need to make before this season gets started, in August?
Well, I think they'll need to look at some depth at the safety position. A lot of people have expressed concern about that position. I think Elijah Molden and Amani Hooker, when healthy, I think they do the job well. I think, that's a pretty solid safety tandem, but the problem is they've both dealt with injuries throughout their career, so you do need to get depth there. I think that's the main position. Everything else, look, could they use a veteran linebacker? Yeah, of course. Could they use help on the defensive line? Sure. Especially at that outside linebacker position or edge position, somebody like a Carl Lawson could be a good addition there. So I think those are the 2 things that they could use upgrades with.
Now, I know you've spoken with Brian, and I think the what fans are looking for or what they think will happen is this team will automatically become a pass-first team. Did you get that sense from Brian? From Brian, because the way I look at it is, yes, you're adding these, but you also added in, Pollock in the backfield, and you have Pollard in the backfield, and you have Tajay Spears. I don't think automatically this is going to make you a pass-heavy team. They still have to be able to run the football and run it effectively. It just may look different from what it has been the last, 8 seasons or 9 seasons Derrick Henry's been here.
Yeah, it's not going to be run first, but the running game is still going to be incorporated with it. Those Bengals offenses, they were physical. They ran the football. You look at Joe Mixon, he had a 1,300-yard rushing season under Brian Callahan and Zach Taylor there in Cincinnati. So, and it goes back to the opening press conference when Brian Callahan, I asked him straight up, about that balance, and he said, don't get it twisted. When it's time to run the football, they're going to run the football. And I think it's a testament to him just recognizing the physical nature that this organization has been built upon, right? Going back to Earl Campbell all the way to, Chris Johnson, not physical, but still running the football and picking up yards. And then, you got Eddie George and obviously Derrick Henry. There's a history of the rushing game being a significant part of the offense. Brian Callahan recognizes that, and he plans to continue that. But I think it's just going to be a bit easier to run the football because they're going to face a lot more light boxes and things like that because of more 11 personnel and more passing the football. It'll probably be more like a 60-40 type of, relation as opposed to, okay, go out, establish the run, and then pass.
I think
that's a really interesting question.
I think every game will dictate whether they run heavy or they pass heavy, I believe. But you can't leave out Lindale White either. He had a really good season before Chris Johnson got there. I think he had over 1,000 yards, didn't he?
Oh yeah, the year before Chris Johnson was there, he got the bulk. He had well over 300 carries.
Absolutely. So we got to throw Lindale in there.
He didn't have a huge year, but he had a good year. He was a good workhorse.
He scored a lot of touchdowns one season too. He had a high touchdown total.
Very high. That was, I think, the Thunder and Light. Is that what they called them?
Yeah, that was the. I don't think they were called
Thunder. What was
Smash and Dash?
Smash and Dash. Thank you, Nick. Thank you. My mind is going. It hasn't been that long. I should remember.
It's still from the other day. You're still recouping from the other day. Don't worry about it, Willie.
Had a heavy weekend. Graduation that got to me.
Advil, Powerade, Buffalo chicken wraps. That's the trifecta.
But Teron, I think that's a central question: is what the run pass distribution ends up being. And like D-Mase says, you get behind in games. If that happens several times, that's probably not good. You have to throw it more than you kind of want to. But I'm curious because you used to hear this all the time when they had Mariota, and even Tannehill to a degree. Ideally, you don't want to have to throw it with guys like that more than 25 or 30 times, right? It's not a throw 40 times kind of offense. But could this offense get to that? And is Levis ready for that? Because that's a lot of dropbacks.
Yeah, I think Levis is definitely ready for that. I think he's very capable of excelling, and I think he could be a high-volume passer. They just got to get him to understand take what the defense gives you at times, and check it down. And he started to understand that. And I think having, Bo Hardegree and Nick Holtz and Brian Callahan there working with him, I think that's going to be really good for him and help him get there. The other thing is the offensive line, right? And this offensive line is going to be important as far as protecting him and being able to, have those lengthy 10 to 15 yard developing routes, you know what I mean? The 5 and 7 step drop passing plays and those types of things. You got to have the protection for that. So I think they've made the investments. I believe J.C. Latham is going to, after a typical rookie start, I think he's going to settle in and be a darn good blocker. And we know what Lloyd Cushenberry brings to the table. I almost called him Zach Martin. Peter Skoronski, I think, is going to really elevate as a left guard as well. So I think they're in good shape there. We'll see what happens on the right side, but that's going to be the area to focus on.
How similar in what you've tried to, assess of the new defense with the new defensive coordinator, how similar is what they're going to ask L'Jarius Sneed to do here as it was in Kansas City? That's probably a difficult question to answer, but I'm asking you because you understand it better than I do.
It's not a difficult question. They're going to ask him and demand him to press and be physical at the line of scrimmage. I think it goes back to, you look at Denard Wilson, he's a very aggressive-minded coach. You look at Steve Jackson, and you just look at what they brought in, right? They brought in 2 guys. That's what they do. Sneed and Awuzie, that's what they do. They cause that chatter. They have conversations with receivers at the line of scrimmage. And I'm getting excited about it because it's something that, is fun to watch. You want to see that challenge. You get tired of seeing free releases off the ball right into your routes, and then you wonder why, teams convert so many third and longs. Well, okay, it's 3rd and 8. You're 10 yards off the ball. Listen, I'm going to eat because I get a free release and I can run whatever daggone route I want, and that also makes it harder for the guys up front to get to the quarterback. So I think when you look at all those things involved and you look at how Denard Wilson has talked about, those guys on the outside giving the guys up front just an extra tick or two to get to the quarterback and finish the job. That tells you right there. It's going to be physical football, and as a receiver, you just got to, going against that secondary, you better strap up and get ready to rock and make sure your releases are right.
I think one of the things to follow this year, I was just reading a really interesting article, and it had to do with the hockey player. It was centered in on some hockey players that did very well to earn a big contract, similar to Snead, right? But then how they handled the part of when you get paid more, there's more pressure, there's more expectation, and if you don't live up to it, it's harder to live up to the contract, right? Even if you're still the same player, that's what a lot of these players would say. They're like, I was still the same guy. I earned the contract because I was good, but I didn't become a different player after I got the contract. I was just viewed differently. I'm curious how Snead will handle that part of it, because that's a tough thing.
Well, I think this. If he goes out and plays the way that he's played the last couple of years, anybody who's questioning the contract, I think they might want to take another look. Because over the last couple of years, he proved himself to be a top 5 corner in this league. So I don't see how someone can have an issue with that. And here's the thing. If he plays as a top 5 corner in this league, by the time the next couple contracts are done, Patrick Surtain and some of the other younger guys, he may not even be a top 10 paid corner. So I don't think that should apply to L'Jarius Sneed if he plays the way he has. But you are right, guys get a big contract and then there's a different set of demands and expectations placed upon them, and that's just one of those things. If you want the big deal, you got to be willing to take those on.
Yeah, you do, and I'm sure he will be just fine, because I think he fits the type of defense Denard Wilson wants to play. If you've watched Baltimore, they are aggressive secondary, and, a lot of times, sometimes it bites them in the rear end, but a lot of times, refs allow them to be physical, and that works to their advantage. So I'm hoping that that's the same thing here with, both corners, not just Snead, but both of them. And you can throw in,
McQuarrie.
Yeah, McQuarrie as well. He's a physical guy, so that'll come naturally to him. So I think the only sort of hesitation I have with the secondary is the depth. If one of those guys go down, then who do they look to be the starter? Because it's going to be a war of attrition. And if Snead or, the other guy goes down, then who do you have replacing them? I know, McQuarrie can come in and be a corner, but would it be that, how much of a drop off would it be to go from Snead to McQuarrie or whatnot? So that's my concern, is the depth at that position.
Yeah, and I think the development of Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is going to be, interesting. He's a guy that they believe could play on the outside as well as excel as a nickel, so you got that. I'm curious to see, now I haven't seen anything as of yet, but, William Jackson III, if they sign him, now this is a first-round pick. Of course, we're talking about 5 years ago, maybe even longer than that, 7. If they sign him as a depth option, I mean, that's something to look at. I'm not going to say, hey, he's going to be, a significant contributor, but that gives you veteran depth and better depth than what you've had already. So I definitely agree. We'll see how that continues to play out. But, injuries are something they're going to have to avoid. You know what I mean? That's really the bottom line.
We're talking with Jerron Davenport, brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. I'll circle back to a question that D-Mase asked you earlier, TD, about depth at certain positions. What about tight end? I know that was one position that Brian Callahan mentioned in his press conference a few weeks ago of, maybe getting more bodies in there, more guys at that position. They haven't done it yet. That's not to say that they won't. Same thing with the safety position, although they haven't addressed it yet. It's not that they won't. Do you think that they will address tight end? And what's maybe the vibe that you've gotten about their feelings toward Josh Wiley and Chig?
Well, they did sign a tight end. They signed Nick Vanette, who was a third-round pick of the Seahawks a few years ago. So they've addressed it in their book as far as adding that veteran. So they have depth there. And then, again, they did sign a couple undrafted free agents. We'll see how those guys work out. But I think, they've put 3 more bodies in the room. Now, as far as what's available out there and what was before signing Nick Vanette, there wasn't much available. So not sure any other way they could have added to it. I feel as though that's something they did work to address. Now, is it at the level that a lot of people would have wanted? No, of course not.
What do you expect to be the role of the tight end in Brian Callahan's offense?
Well, you're going to see a lot of 11 personnel. I think, actually Tyler Boyd is a guy I would look at as a tight end. Now, obviously not by position, but by concept, right, within the passing game. So I think the role is going to be, you'll see some 12 personnel, I would imagine. I think Chig is a guy that they'll work to create matchups with and try to get him, matched up with a DB that's too small for him or a linebacker that's too slow. I think that's really the way it works, and we'll see. That's the whole mystery of how this is coming out, and that's why it's so exciting to get around these guys and see more and more of what they're going to do.
Whole lot of mystery surrounding this team in the offseason. TD, we got OTAs starting tomorrow. What are some things that you are going to be looking for? And I understand it's just, one day of OTAs, but maybe what are some things that fans can be looking for as well?
Yeah, I think seeing Calvin Ridley in action, for the first time. I've been told that all he does is set the tone for things there. So definitely looking forward to seeing that. Want to see, Jeffrey Simmons and Sweat, see their interaction and how things work there. Look, overall, it's just exciting. I was talking to Jim Wyatt today, being over there at the Titans house where they're, previewing the new stadium options. And, man, it's just exciting to be back, in the mix. That's really overall. I can't tell you a particular thing because I'm just excited about everything with it.
It's with so many questions and mystery, so to speak, this offseason, it'll be fun to start kind of peeling back the curtain a little bit of what this team might look like. Obviously, it's early. Obviously, there's only so much that you can learn, but at least getting a first look at some of these guys, like you mentioned, Calvin Ridley included, in a Titans uniform is going to be interesting to see. But you mentioned you were at the Titans house today. Could you give us a little bit of a recap? What stuck out to you? What's looking nice with the new stadium?
Yeah, wow, they set it up really, really well. Reggie Polk of Polk and Associates Construction, they're a part of the team that's building the stadium itself, but he and his group, they built this preview, and you go in, and the first thing you see is like this beautiful replica of the stadium, and the detail is unbelievable. It's 6 by 8 feet. It has detail all the way down to the scoreboard. The cars on the outside of it, the lights are lit. Like, it's crazy. It's said to be the most detailed replica of a stadium in the country. So you have that just to really get a feel for the stadium. Then they have a nice preview where you walk in the room and it's kind of like you're in a suite at the stadium and you get to see like the view. They did a great job. Jim Rice, the VP of ticket sales, he took us through it, and Kate Guerrera from the Titans organization. They did a great job of just putting it together. And they have a room. It's called the Javon Kearse room. They have rooms where they go to close the deals. You could go in. One's a Javon Kearse theme. Another one is a Eddie George theme. Then they have one with records on the wall and just all significant Titans moments in history. It's something I know if I went through that and I was a Titans fan, I'd be like, yeah, sign me up. Let's go ahead and get these tickets rocking. And I asked Jim Rice at the end of it because, trying to think from the perspective of the common fan, what are you guys doing to make sure that the basic fan, the fan by which this organization was built upon, is still included, because I saw going, Veteran Stadium to Lincoln Financial Field, even, doing 49er stuff, going from Candlestick to Levi Stadium. The soul was taken out, because the common fan was priced out. And they said that they're going to have 40% of PSL options, under $3,500. So I thought that was really good that they made ways to keep. Now, they're not going to be the best seats. Like, don't get it twisted. But there will be a way that you can get into the stadium. So I think that's really good that they're doing that.
I must be in the front row.
For $5.
It will not be the euchre seat, though,
Exactly.
behind the pole. You won't get that.
Yeah.
TD, appreciate you for stopping by. Before we let you go, please let us know about ESPN Bet Sportsbook.
Yeah, for sure. ESPN Bet is ready to take you through all the huge sporting moments this spring. And, after next week, this summer, it's the exclusive sportsbook at ESPN, and it has it all, including offers and promotions from Scott Van Pelt and Stephen A. Smith. From the playoff intensity to getting on the links and out to the ballpark, there's no better time to be a sports fan than right now. As a new user, you get $100 in bonus bets for making any sportsbook bet. So download ESPN Bet today. What a play. You must be 21 or older and in Tennessee. For problem gambling support, call or text TN Redline 800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. See the app for details.
You're the best, TD. Appreciate you for stopping by.
All right, appreciate you. And let me real quick say, shout out Drew Davenport, graduating from Nashville School of the Arts tonight. I'm proud of her. That's my 18-year-old, my little girl.
Right.
All
Congrats. We got a bunch of graduates around here.
So many graduates around here. A whole lot of proud family members. So congratulations, TD.
All right, appreciate it.
All right, thanks, TD. There's a lot of proud dads, proud grads around here.
It's that time of year.
It is that time of year.
Bunch of
indeed.
proud parents.
And it also is the time of year of maybe walking back some feelings a little bit. Maybe of resurfacing of conversations that I thought that we had already buried by this point. But no, we have not. Because amongst Predators fans, those conversations have resurfaced, and they did over the weekend. And we will get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
Let's talk Loan Pronto, the Express Equity Line of Credit program. I've been telling you about it now for months, and it's as simple as this. If you're a home owner and you're looking for cash and you've got some bills that are piling up that have high interest rates, this is a no-brainer for you because the formula comes out. They've done the research. The average homeowner will save over $850 a month with the Express Equity Line of Credit program. So if you've got those credit card bills or high interest loans that are eating you up, you really should look at this. And don't waste any more time. Just call Loan Pronto and find out about it. 615-499-5780. They can get you approval on this in a very short amount of time. And you can turn this whole project around also in about 7 to 10 days in a lot of cases. You got to like that. So you can get this plan moving quickly. And if you've got a plan for a home improvement project, this is also a great tool for you. 615-499-5780 or go online at loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval, equal housing lender.
From the time I signed here, I've just been very grateful, and I've been looking forward to these opportunities. And my teammates and the coaches have been just amazing, welcoming me in and helping me, get acclimated early. And this run's just been. I mean, this is only the second time I've been past the first round in my career, and now we're going to the conference finals. It's just, I mean, at 33, I think there's a certain level of appreciation you have that you wouldn't have had as a young player. And we've talked about it. Several times when you go into Game 7 against Vegas, and you've played that game 100 times in your driveway and on your outdoor rink as a kid, and you get to do it for real. And I've probably let it stress me out more than it's been fun at times, just because you want it so bad. But it's I'm starting to relax a little bit more, and it's getting a lot more fun as it's going here.
Now that was none other than Matt Duchene. Of course, former Predator, now with the Dallas Stars. He scored the game winner in double overtime for the Stars on Friday night, and now the Dallas Stars will be in the Western Conference Final, taking on the winner of the Edmonton and Vancouver game tonight. So that obviously sparked a lot of conversation amongst Predators fans. Anytime Matt Duchene does something well, it's gonna spark conversation. Anytime Matt Duchene does something horrific, it is going to spark a whole lot of conversation with Matt Duchene. And Matt Duchene, of course, going back to this past offseason, Barry Trotz takes over. He decides to buy out the contracts of Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson to move on from the two of them. And that was a move at the time I personally agreed with. I don't want to speak for you guys, but I believe it was a move that both of you agreed with, just going in a different direction. But, of course, Matt Duchene in the headlines, the Dallas Stars going to the Western Conference Final at the hands of Matt Duchene, sparked a lot of conversation. I saw this tweet from Jeff Middleton, who covers the Calgary Flames for Flames Nation. He said, Matt Duchene is being paid by the Nashville Predators to score goals that advance a different team in the same division to the Western Conference Final, because Barry Trotz said that this isn't a place where you, quote, come and retire. Some food for thought tonight, Predators fans. And of course, that just threw Predators fans into a tizzy. So I'll ask you, Willy, did the Predators make a mistake buying out Matt Duchene?
Well, I think would you ask Barry Trotz and every player in that locker room that same question? I think the answer would be pretty across the board the same. We'll never know what it would have looked like if they had kept Duchene for one more year under an Andrew Brunette system. It's a fair question to ask. I guess what I would say to a tweet like that where was that tweet in January? Where was that tweet in February and March? I think when you make a bold decision like that, you have to know that what is happening with Matt Duchene very possibly could have happened. Right? I remember asking this question at the end of the preseason, and I made this statement right before the regular season was going to start on the preview show, Predators Radio pregame show. I said, let's decide right now. If you are not on board with this, speak now, before the season starts, about the Johansson-Duchene moves, because I don't want to hear it during the regular season in retrospect. Because I think you would have to say that Barry Trotz and his angle of doing it, it's a little stale. We need to change up the leadership. We want a different vibe in the locker room. We want a different culture in the locker room. That's what he set out to do, and that's what he did. And there is a difference between leading a team making $8 million a year and being a piece of a very deep team that could win the whole thing and doing it for $3 million. And he's pulling his weight. He was an excellent pickup for Dallas in the role that he's in. He was not a good fit for $8 million at the top of the Predators lineup, and that was a problem, right? So this is all revisionist history here, but it's also just part of the business. If you're going to make that move, you kind of know that this is possible, right? Yeah. As soon as Duchene signed with the Stars, you're like, he might hit as a nice $3 million player. And
didn't we say that this time last year, whenever the news broke that the Predators were buying out Matt Duchene? Didn't we say, he's probably going to be part of a pretty good team in Dallas?
Yeah.
And
we
he
knew
might
Dallas
do some
was going to be
things that
good
are
with or
pretty
without
good.
Duchesne, and he was a nice complimentary pickup for them.
And didn't we say don't come crying to us if Matt Duchesne, if the Stars at least with Matt Duchesne find themselves in the Stanley Cup Final, don't come crying to us because it's a much different role that he's playing in Dallas than he would have
But
here.
this was not a story for 6 months.
No, it
right?
wasn't.
And now he scores 1 goal. And look, I will say this: he played a great Game 6. He was, I thought, the best guy on the ice in the 2 overtimes. It was a double overtime game. Did I stay up and watch the whole thing? Yes, I did. I watched the whole thing. It was a great hockey game. Dallas was the better team. They actually scored in the first overtime. It was waved off for goalie interference, a very borderline call. Duchesne was in on that goal, too. He didn't score it, but he set a screen. He won the faceoff. He was playing great. That's the best I've seen him in any playoff game for the Stars. But he's played 13 playoff games, got 2 goals. He's got 4 assists. He's not leading them down. He's not the torchbearer at the top of the first line like he was kind of expected to be when he was signing an 8-year, $8 million contract for the Predators. He is not a guy that the team is built around. He is a good player on a very deep, well-constructed team. And ironically, to me, that's the kind of attack that I'm trying to build if I'm Barry Trotz. The top 9, a mix of older players and younger players, really good goaltending. To me, that's kind of a model. They might be good enough to win the whole thing.
Yeah, but even if they win and Duchesne plays well, I mean, listen, it's over with. You've been there. You had him for a period of time. It didn't work out, the way you thought it was going to work out. Was he a good player? Yes, he's a good player, but also Barry probably saw some complacency there as well. You're a good player, but you're complacent with just being here in Nashville. We got to change that because we got to have people that want to come here and play and be a part of something winning and not just be here because Nashville is a great place to live and retire. I don't want those guys. You can live and retire afterwards, but right now you got a job to do, and that's to score goals. He averaged maybe, 20 goals per season, maybe one less, somewhere around there.
That great year.
He had the 1 year where it was like
40,
45 goals,
Yeah.
and that was it. And then every other year was 20, mid-20 or below.
Of the seasons he's played for the Predators, there was one really good season. And the other ones were kind of.
But it wasn't worth
disappointing.
keeping him at $8 million. It wasn't. So if he goes to, if Dallas wins the Stanley Cup and he scores a goal in the Stanley Cup Finals, so be it. He wouldn't have done that here because what they were asking him to do here is a little bit, a lot different from what they're asking him to do in Dallas.
Also, think about this. They took the money. Now, they're still having to pay Duchesne, as Jeff Middleton points out. But when Jeff puts that out, they've known this from day one, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody who's covering the Predators and follows the Predators knows that this is not brand new news. They're paying him to play for the other team.
Yeah.
They knew that the day they did that. They're willing to deal with the consequences of that. And so what's one of the consequences? His $8 million was then turned and spent on Nyquist and O'Reilly. So the two of those guys combined don't make $8 million. Were those guys more productive or less productive than Duchesne?
Those guys were far more productive. Even just only Ryan O'Reilly or only Gus Nyquist, and without having the numbers in front of me and comparing them to Matt Duchesne's numbers, I would take one of those players alone over Matt Duchesne, much less both of them for less than $8 million.
Right, and that doesn't even get into the secondary issue of influence in the locker room, the ones that we cannot quantify that.
Yeah.
But I think to a person, you would hear, did Nyquist and O'Reilly give them the culture change for the positive that Barry Trotz was looking for? I think it's an A+ across the board.
Totally.
So would they do it over again? Oh, yeah. I think they would do it over again in a heartbeat, even with what's going on right now. You take that whole thing over again. And going forward, unknown, I'm good with it.
The Predators fans now that are bitching and moaning about the Predators moving on from Matt Duchesne and paying him to quote-unquote score goals for another team. Because is that what's happening? Yeah. It is. But were you against it when it happened, or were you for the move because of what Matt Duchesne was
not doing?
Not doing, yes. And I don't think that Matt Duchesne was a bad guy. But I will ask you this. 25 goals, 40 assists, 65 points on the season so far. Would you pay $8 million for that? I wouldn't.
No, I will take the $8 million on Nyquist and O'Reilly and the combined output that you got from those two.
Yeah. 2 goals, 4 assists, and 13 playoff games.
And
Would
that's
you pay
really
$8 million for that?
That's the crux of it.
No.
No.
I wouldn't. It wasn't just the production. It was also the comment that Barry Trotz made of, we don't want you to come to Nashville to retire. We want you to come to Nashville to win championships. I think that probably had a lot to do with Matt Duchene and his attitude.
I think if you read between the lines, there's no question that was some of that. And Matt Duchene, he has been open talking about that. He took that hard. He took it hard because he's human, right? And he's been asked about it.
He got fired.
He got fired. He got fired.
Yeah.
And I give him credit. He's been a great $3 million player for the Stars.
Yeah.
But I just don't think it was going to happen here for the Predators. So, again, would you do it over again and doing the same thing? I think so.
I would do it without hesitation.
Oh,
I would too. And I know Robbie and Joe got into could they have traded him? I think they looked at all options of trying to trade him. Remember, you only get three retained salaries. They used one on Johansson. They went down the road, I think, the timeline of let's see how we could move on from Johansson and Duchene. Those were the two guys that made a lot of money, that weren't as valuable as their contract. They wanted to shake it up. So how could they move on from both of them? And we know one guy got traded and one guy got bought out. I think they tried to trade Duchene every which way, but they just couldn't find the right deal, and they got to the point where, we have to bite the bullet, and it's they got to swallow a lot of dead money here over the next 2 years on that. So it's a decision with ramifications.
Totally.
But once again, I think it was a good move. Are they better or not, or better or worse after 1 year of the Johansson Duchene moves, which netted them nothing in return?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. It just cleared up some cap space that they used
say
wisely
they're better.
on O'Reilly. They're better.
They're better, yeah.
It's not even close. They're way better.
Yeah.
We just got done reading the whole survey, the confidence in Barry.
Yeah.
That's because of how well O'Reilly and Nyquist played for less money than Duchene was making, let alone not having Johansson.
How handcuffed did we all feel with the Predators with those contracts? I know I did. I
Absolutely.
felt like, the Predators could do this, but they got to pay two freaking guys $16 million total combined,
who aren't worth that money, and you
aren't
have
giving you a fraction of that.
Right,
in
and
return.
it was weighing on everybody. It was weighing on Johansson and Duchene. Remember, they went through the whole summer the year before of being exposed in the expansion draft.
Yeah.
Seattle could have taken one of them for nothing.
And they chose
that
not
was
to.
telling. So that was weighing on them all throughout the process there. It was tough. And that's why Barry Trotz said, look, I've just got to we need a reset here. We need to start it over. And it'll cost us money to do this, but I think we'll be better off, was the mindset. And he did what he did. And I'm happy for Matt Duchene.
Yeah,
he
good for
deserved
him.
the moment in the sun. That was a big goal that he scored there.
Yeah.
And he let out a ton of emotion. The Stars look very, very good. That's a team that is doing what they were set out to do. Beat you with depth. They've got a good blend of young players and veterans. They've got the goalie. That's a team that has a chance to win the whole thing.
Would the Predators still be playing today with Matt Duchene making $8 million on the top line? I don't think so. Why could I say that with confidence that they would be if they never got to that point with Matt Duchene on this team? You talk about it a lot, D-Mase, like with receivers. Like, he's a good 2, but he can't be a 1. Matt Duchene couldn't play the role that the Predators signed him to play. The $8 million leader, top line kind of guy. He doesn't have to do that in Dallas. And he can play that role pretty well.
Yeah, if they were
Sometimes
paying
guys
him,
just can't play that role.
Yeah, when the money escalates, the pressure does as well. The expectation does as well. And had they brought you in here and was paying you $4 million, then okay, the way you were playing, it was good. And you having a 45 goal season or 43 goal season, that would have been great if they were paying you $4 million or $3 million, but they were paying you $8 million. And what you were giving them wasn't worth the what they were paying you. So they had to move on. Now, Dallas got you at half price, and what you're doing for them, equals what they're paying.
Yeah.
You know, you going out and playing the way you're playing on the second or third line, they're only paying you $4 million. So what you're doing is like, we're good with that.
Yeah.
That's what we're paying you for. We're good. Now, if they were paying you $8 million,
It's a different story.
yeah, it'd be a different story.
And he signed a 1-year deal with Dallas. So the interesting thing now is he is an unrestricted free agent. I'm curious what the market will be for him going forward. Very intrigued because he's had a good year.
Yeah, he has. We have a bunch of thoughts on this. We are right to you on this coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We're broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Matt Duchene scored the game winner in double overtime to send the Dallas Stars to the Western Conference Final. And Predators fans were feeling some type of way about it. So we are right to you and your reaction on that. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ricky is on the line with a thought on Matt Duchene. What's up, Ricky?
Hey, good afternoon, guys. I just want to make a quick point. With Duchene's, this was basically the second locker room, he kind of feels like he wore his welcome out. Colorado, Nashville. And to D-Mace's point, when you sign a guy for $8 million in Nashville, you're actually signing him for about 12 with the tax breaks here. That's Panarin money. That's Nylander money. You're expecting 90 to 100 points, 40 to 50 goals. He just isn't that type of player. And I like the move. I like getting rid of him. I just think O'Reilly's a proven winner, a great locker room guy. You've never heard one negative thing about him. And let's continue to rebuild. I love just the fact that he's not here anymore.
Yeah, thanks for your call, Ricky. And not to mention, Ryan O'Reilly makes significantly less money.
He made a good point there. He made a good point there that, you're paying him 8 here. That's, 9, 10 somewhere else. And because we always talk about Nashville, what would be sort of that draw? What would be that extra carrot for individuals? Well, I can pay you, and you're not going to get as much taken away from taxes.
Yeah, like your money in Nashville goes
a little bit further.
Than Toronto.
Yeah, it goes a little bit further in regards to taxes, not a little bit further in regards to cost of living, because the cost of living is damn high here.
But
as far as taxes, it goes a long way. So, yeah, $8 million. Some people can say, $8 million translate in New York to like $12 million or $11 million, or in California, 11, 12 million. So, and he just wasn't worth that, his time here. Not to say he wasn't worth 4, 3, but he wasn't worth the 8 that they were paying him.
Yeah. And
I think Ricky's spot on.
Totally.
There are some guys that just aren't the guys that are leading you, that when you make that money, there's a lot that goes with that, right? And he just, in that span of time with the Predators, he had the one good year. The rest of the time was very up and down. Mm-hmm. And when you're making that money, it's not great return on the investment. And Johansson, I think he was an example. I think the first 3 or 4 years of that contract, maybe not $8 million, but as a number one center, he did very well. He was productive. And then he got to the point where it was just up and down, not worth $8 million. But he doesn't have a different way of helping you win, really. So you just couldn't. It just messed up the budget, right? It was weighing down the whole salary structure, right?
And if you want to look at it from a little bit more of a holistic perception, I think that also plays into the decision as well, because I don't want it to get misconstrued. And Willie, you would know much better than I would, but it's not like Matt Duchene was cancerous in the locker room. It's not like he was a horrible guy that everybody just hated. But there was a certain level of expectation, preparation, maybe that Duchene and Ryan Johansson just didn't meet. And they may have been bringing down the rest of the guys around him.
I think Barry Trotz said it. He goes, it wasn't personal, right? Those two guys are really good people that, I don't know that well, but professionally, I was around a lot. It's a good people. But it just was a business decision, right?
Yeah,
not everybody is the perfect leader. That there sometimes is, that Joey was a great piece of a lot of great Predator teams. Like when they have reunions for the 2017, Ryan Johansson was a massive, massive part of those winning teams.
Just wear out his welcome.
Well, I mean, you can't, it's not necessarily about him in the locker room, because I don't think he was a cancer in the locker room, but it is about, okay, we're paying you this much money, you're not producing, we can't continue to have you in this locker room if you're not producing, making it, because everybody else is watching you and everybody's asking you to pull your weight, and if you're not pulling your weight and it's consistently that way, as a GM, I got to make a move for the locker room.
Stillman & Company will continue this conversation coming up next. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Be love and love on your people. Have a wonderful Monday and peace.